had some in-state basketball last night. Utah women against a ranked Oklahoma State team. Thought they were going to get it done. Thought they had it. Unfortunately, just slips out of their fingers in a very poorly officiated game at the Huntsman. Utah experiences their first loss in the last 8 games. Gavin Peterson and his crew will look to get back on the winning ways as the regular season, the end of the regular season, rapidly approaching. We're 10 days away from the end of the regular season in college basketball, women's college basketball. It's nuts. Tournament time is upon us very nearly. Some interesting things going on in the sports world that we will talk about. Again, on the financial perspective, the Dodgers, the commissioner of Major League Baseball basically had to go out and talk to everyone about, like, hey, I know we don't love what the Dodgers are doing, but it's within the rules, so you can't be mad at them for it. In other sports, when things are in favor of one particular franchise, the intervention commissioner, but doesn't look like that's going to happen in Major League Baseball. We'll get to that here in a little bit. In half an hour, Jerry Palm is going to join us, stop by from CBS Sports to talk bracketology, where the local in-state teams sit in the bracketology picture, where Utah State's going to be, where BYU is after a huge win, a record-setting win over the Kansas Jayhawks last night. University of Utah reached into the collective Kansas Jayhawk chest and ripped out their heart Indiana Jones style. A couple more beats while it's still in the hand, and now Kansas is just completely in disarray.
I love the visual, Indiana Jones style. Yes, I can.
You know what I'm talking
see
about.
What you're talking about,
But
or Dumb and Dumber style.
I think I was like 12 when I first, maybe younger probably, when I first saw that, and I remember very seriously wondering if that's how it would happen. If, in the unlikely event of my life, someone ripped my heart out of my chest,
would it still beat a
if
little
it would
bit?
still beat. I'm still curious. I don't know. I think it would, right? I mean, there's always like a little bit of leftover nervous electricity in your body.
It's not. Yeah. Is it like when a chicken's head gets cut off and they still pulse a little bit?
I don't think it's the same thing.
Running a little bit.
I don't think it's the same thing, but I'm not sure.
You heard my hesitation. I'm like, should I go this
You could
far
say
on
that.
the?
You
I
could
know.
say
I
it.
know that I could technically
We're talking
say it,
about
but
chickens.
do we want to be?
Okay.
Do we want that visual for our listeners here?
Here's a great thing. I should have put this on the poll. I didn't know this was going to come up today. The truth that you were absolutely certain of when you were a kid, and that you still are just like, yeah, that totally happens. That you don't actually know if it's true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how many people that are even listening right now have actually witnessed the decapitation of a chicken and the reaction of the chicken afterward? Now, I know there are these anecdotal stories, but, like, that's something that I don't know when you learned that in elementary school, James, but you just know it's true. For your whole life, you know for sure that when a chicken loses its head, it runs around.
Or if you grew up on a farm or ranch, like you had chickens and you ate them, like you know those things.
877-353-0700.
You didn't even have to learn from school.
I'll tell you this. I was very certain my whole life that cow tipping was a real thing. That cows slept standing up and that you could go push them over in the pasture. All right? So my buddies and I were in high school, and we were down staying at a cabin in Springdale. If you know where Springdale's at.
Yeah.
Like in the mouth of Zion Canyon. And, of course, there's cows around there, right? And I was like, it was probably 3 a.m, and we were bored teenagers. We were like, let's go see if we can tip those cows. And my one buddy was just like, dude, you cannot tip a cow. That's not real. I'm like, oh, it's real. For sure it's real. Let's go do it. So
I've seen Tommy Boy, okay? It's real.
So we went. We piled into this Suburban at like 3 a.m. We drove to this pasture. We jumped over the fence, and all of the cows were either awake, standing, looking at us like mooing, or the cows that were laying down were laying down. There's no cow tipping to be done. But there are these things, there are these truths that you know when you're a kid. And the chicken with its head cut off is one of them. And now I'm wondering if the heart still beats when you rip it out of the
Yeah.
chest. Because that's what Utah basketball did to Kansas.
Should we get a surgeon on the show?
Yes. Any heart surgeon who is listening to the show right now.
Or I don't know, is there someone particularly crazy you fought with or against in MMA, PFL, UFC that might have tried that with someone?
Tried ripping someone's heart out of their chest?
Maybe I'm just trying to exhaust the list of potential experts.
There's a bunch of them, right? 877-353-0700. That, like, playground truth that got debunked later in your life or that you question. Because there's also the one that, like, you can still see after you get decapitated. You've heard this one, James?
Yeah.
How does anyone know?
I don't know about
How
that.
would anybody be able to prove
that?
that? How do we even know that dogs only see black and white? Like, all of these things that we're just like, no, this is 100% true.
There's that.
How do you know?
There's that really cool story in the not to get completely religious on this, but in the Book of Mormon about where the big battle in Ether with the Jaredites, and the guy, it says he does a push-up. He basically does a push-up with after he's been decapitated. And you're like, no way that
Like,
happened.
what is he trying to prove?
Yeah, what's he? No, that
I'm still good. I'm still good. Push up.
Yeah, I got you, and then he dies. It's like, okay, you're not good.
Like,
but
where did that truth come from?
It's even. I mean, I'm sure there's. I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe there's stories in the Bible with describing something like that too. But the one I think of happens to be from the Book of Mormon.
Everybody in their elementary schoolyard had a Curtis Taylor, that wild kid whose parents were never home, that would walk up and say something like, "Hey, you know, if your head gets chopped off, you can see for another 15 seconds." And then, of course, as a 9-year-old, you're just like, whoa, is that real? We've gone a little far afield, but 877-353-0700 on the Dish Pros text line. If you want to tell us those anecdotal truths, non-truths, falsities.
They don't have to be violent like ours happen to be too. If you have ones that aren't particularly violent, those are good too.
Yeah, those are also
You don't
great.
have to fit in with our crazy minds.
Yes, please. Anyway, Utah ripped the heart out of Kansas. BYU threw it on the ground and stomped on it and handed them the worst loss ever in the Bill Self era. That's the wrong way to say it, right? If you say worst loss ever, it sounds like ever. The worst loss in the Bill Self era. And not only did they do that, but the combination of bad losses to Utah and to BYU, an embarrassing loss at the hands of the Cougars, completely unraveled the culture that exists in a college basketball program, in a college sports program, period, where you kind of keep everything in-house and you don't tell people about the locker room issues that are going on right now. Bill Self post-game basically went and said, we need to get away from each other. We can't stand being around each other. Told the media, gathered media.
Just said the quiet part out loud.
We're not getting along. We hate each other. We can't stand each other. I mean, the truth of Kansas right now is they are not that good. They have really good players, and they play under the banner of a blue blood program. But right now, Kansas basketball is not very good, okay? And now, if you're a not very good team that also hates one another, your postseason is kaput. You are not doing anything in the Big 12 tournament or in the NCAA tournament. Your coach choosing this tactic to, like, be completely transparent with the media and be like, yeah, we don't get along. I don't know how you spin that into a chemistry building situation. Bill Self's a lot smarter than I am. He's coached a bunch of really great players, NBA stars, All-Americans at the college level. Maybe he's going to figure this out, but Utah and BYU combined to completely demoralize one of the blue blood programs in the United States of America. What a weekend.
By the way, Bill Self, I don't know if he's always been like that, but at least in recent years, he's started to say things that you're like, wait, you're talking about that publicly? Like, he did that, and I can't remember exactly. Well, no, actually, I do remember now. Then when I start talking about it, at March Madness, when they were eliminated in the second round, and the games were here in Salt Lake City, in the post game he said, we don't have enough Division I talent. We don't have enough Power 5 talent, I think is actually how he put it. We don't have enough Power 5 talent on this team. And it's like, Coach, this is on television. This is all over social media. You just said your team's not. You just said the players on your team aren't very good. So Bill Self, I don't know if it's a recent thing where he's just started to feel like, yeah, I can talk like that, or if that's how he's always been. But he's, at least lately, he's been pretty refreshingly honest and said things that are like, coaches don't usually talk like that, man.
We need to regroup, get away from each other for a day, and go home. Direct quote from Bill Self. I'm talked out. We need to get away from each other. I'll tell you that point blank. I thought this would be a great opportunity to do some team bonding, but it hasn't been. I mean, I appreciate, as a sports media personality, we love
the honesty.
When a coach is transparent and honest at this level. If I'm a player, I don't know if it works for me. If I'm a booster, if I'm a fan, I don't know if this is causing me to panic. It's hilarious to observe when you don't have a horse in the race for Kansas basketball. But I do appreciate the candor. And he's probably right. Not probably right. He's definitely right. No coach says this unless he's absolutely 100% correct about the chemistry situation going on with his team right now. And maybe it'll be fixed as quickly as, all right, guys, no basketball for a day. Go finish your homework. Why did I say that? They don't care about homework in Kansas. Go watch a movie, take your girlfriend out, do what you got to do, and then we'll see you the day after tomorrow. Good luck. I mean, maybe that's a fix for Kansas because they are a team with some NBA talent on it. They are a team that has bodies that can make some noise. They're not a typically great Kansas team. They're not a typically deep Kansas team. And Bill Self is fed up with the way that his team is reacting to one another. So I kind of love it. You know who else is doing this right now? But he's probably gone too far. He's probably jumped the shark, to use that television term. Mick Cronin of UCLA.
Oh, Mick Cronin. Yeah. He's been on one.
Mick Cronin has always been the dude that will say things other coaches won't say. Loved him for it. Loved talking to him on Pac-12 radio when that was a thing for me. He was always the guy that would give you a real answer. And right now, Mick Cronin is so without answers as a head coach in college basketball that he is blaming everybody except himself for the issues that the Bruins are having. And I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't feel that way at times, coaching a bunch of young men who are probably frustrating, and half of them are already having their agents contact other programs for transfer portal and NIL opportunities elsewhere and things like that. But you're a coach who's making $5 million a year. You got to grit through it. Bill Self, Mick Cronin, shout out to both of you for giving us some content on the radio today. We'll see what the loss to Kansas does for their bracketology position with Jerry Palm in just about 15 minutes. Scott Mitchell is going to join us on the show. Scott Mitchell, now the host of Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, a show that precedes the Sean O'Connell show. He's got an hour-long show. And then he's actually got 2 1-hour shows on our airwaves.
On the network, as it were. The Utah's ESPN radio network. On the Fan as well, 103.9, 98.3.
My first question for Scott Mitchell is, how bored was he that he had to do 2 different 1-hour shows at separate times of the day, where he was just like, you know what, my 9 a.m. is open and also my 1 p.m. is open. Just give me something to do. I'm going to ask Scott.
Yeah, I love it.
Jerem Jordan for some red and blue, obviously. He'll have some thoughts about the BYU demolition of Kansas last night. I saw a graphic and retweeted it because that's the only way I can remember what accounts these graphics are coming from. I have to share them on my own account so I can easily recall them. But I saw something that, Utah men's basketball, as we talked about on the show yesterday, had its best weekend of the year with the win over Kansas and then the follow-up win over Kansas State. And you love it. Happy to see it. It's a great thing for this program to build a little bit of positivity, a little bit of momentum? Is it going to change the long-term prognosis of the season or the short-term success you have in the Big 12 tournament or anything like that? Maybe not. But it's plenty of food for thought. I also saw in this graphic the Keba Keita stats comparisons from his time at Utah and his time at BYU. And the question is always, hey, was this the right choice for Keba Keita to make? Did he do the right thing here? Was this the correct personnel decision for him? Did he do the best thing for his career? If you did not see this graphic, at Real OC Sports is where you can find the retweet. It came from CTESPN_Utah, a verified account that I'm pretty sure is verified because of the $8.99 per month or whatever. Keba Keita's stats at Utah in 2023-2024, and please don't text me or tweet at me and say, well, he was the best player on a worse team, and so of course his stats are going to look different. I know what you're saying, all right, but in an individualized era of college basketball, did Keba make the right decision for himself? We know it was not a decision that helped Utah basketball. Did he make the right decision for himself? I'm not trying to dunk on anybody. I'm just using statistical analysis for us to see when it works for guys, when it doesn't work for guys, and whether or not what we think is working or we consider to be working out is the same definition that guy has in his own mind as working out. He was attempting 8 shots a game, making 5 shots a game at Utah. Attempting almost 4 free throws a game, making 2.5 of those a game. Just under 1 offensive rebound per game at Utah, 1.3 steals per game at Utah, 1.4 blocks per game at Utah, 12.4 points per game when he was a running Ute. And in the 2024-2025 season for BYU, which of course is not yet over, he's 4.5 field goals attempted per game, making almost 3 of those, so about 2 field goals less per game. 1.7 free throw attempts per game, only 0.8 of those made, so more than 1.5 free throws below his average from last year. He is rebounding better at BYU, 2.7 offensive rebounds per game, as opposed to just under 1 when he was a Ute. Half the steals per game at 0.6. 1 block per game instead of 1.4 blocks per game, and 6.4 points per game instead of 12.4 points per game. So is he playing for a better team? Yep. BYU is going to be a tournament team. Is he himself playing better basketball? We'll talk about it with Jerem Jordan. You decide for yourself. Is this the right? Would you rather be more of a role player on a tournament team, on a better team? That I'm not of the belief that BYU is going to make a serious tournament run. I thought they would be better this year. I don't think that this is the year that BYU, with all of this investment from Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith and Kevin Young being your coach, I don't think this is the year all of that comes to fruition with some like Cinderella run for BYU. And I actually don't think you get to call it a Cinderella run if BYU is spending the kind of money that they're spending to make their roster happen.
And they've got, going into the season too, like setting the money aside, just looking at what the talent was projected to do in the NBA draft, they were projected to have 2 first-round picks going into the season, Cannon Catchings and Yegor Devin, possibly 2 lottery picks. So that's another reason. If you set aside the money it costs, like the talent coming in, this can't really be a Cinderella team, especially if you're coming out of the Big 12 conference.
Now, if those guys catch fire, everything I'm saying could go up in smoke. See what I did there? Fire, smoke.
Yeah, fire and smoke.
I could be dead wrong about this, but it just doesn't feel like they have figured out the chemistry all the way, and there's a few more games left to play in the regular season. And we know that especially if your guards get hot in tournament time, you can rewrite your own story in any particular year. And you do have accessory pieces, role players, like Checketts that can really help you. And there are guys, when you go down, like the Richie Saunders equation, everyone came into the year being like, oh my gosh, look what they've got with Yegor Demon and with Cannon Catchings and with some of these guys. But really, Richie Saunders has been the story.
Been their best player, been their best offensive player.
He's been the story of the season for BYU. Now, maybe he carries them further in this tournament than I think he can. The problem is when you go into a Big 12 tournament, especially into March Madness, you're running up against teams that have like 3 and 4 guys that are as good or better than you. So I don't think this is the year that BYU's experiment pays off. I'm not telling you, if you're a BYU fan out there, that it's never going to pay off. I just don't think it's happening this time. Maybe AJ DeBonsa comes in and he's the second coming of Cooper Flagg, and all of a sudden you've got an Elite Eight team or better. So in that case, you're Checketts and you've transferred. You haven't just transferred, but you've transferred from a place where you're probably the number 1 option for Utah, or the number 2 option, not scoring option. It was going to be Gabe Madsen this year, I'm pretty sure. But you're the second best player at worst on a team. Or you go to a better team where you are 4th or 5th or 6th on the focus list in the transfer portal era, and you can extend this to professional free agency and trades and things like that. What's better? To be the second best player on a team that is not really going to chase anything significant, at least this time around, or to be a guy who's a role player on a team that probably will be better and at least have some realistic March Madness tournament hopes, but I don't think is going to do anything, make any major noise there. I don't know if BYU is a second weekend team. I truly don't know. I'm not trying to throw shade at the Cougs. What's a better place to be? That's something that everybody who goes into the transfer portal has to think for themselves. Now, for me, the answer is it better or worse is just how much you play. For me, I don't have NBA aspirations, NFL aspirations. When I transferred in my college career, it was just like, just take me somewhere I can play.
You wanted some PT.
I just need, like, and no delusions about, like, well, you know, going to a place like Weber State, you're going to get more attention, and going to a place like Weber State, you're actually on a better team than when you're at Utah. That was a different equation. For Keba, it's not that equation. It's not like, well, where can I play more? You can play more at Utah. You can be more of a feature at Utah. What is better for your career? What is better for your goal of having professional opportunities? In this particular case, what's better? Being the second best player, or maybe the best player on a struggling team, or being the 4th or 5th or 6th best player on a team that is not struggling but isn't great either? Like, it's a no-brainer if you get to go from like a garbage team that is not going to do anything in college basketball and still have a role, still be active, still play some minutes for a national championship contender. BYU ain't that. Okay? They're not. I don't know. I'm genuinely asking you, 877-353-0700. Like, Keanu Tanuvasa is going to, at some point next year, evaluate whether or not transferring to BYU is the right thing for him to do. And it's largely going to be based on the results that those teams have, because he's going to get playing time galore. It's not a playing time equation for someone who's that good, right? He's going to have to decide, okay, I'm not a captain at BYU. I probably would have been a captain at Utah. Was that important for me? I don't know. Like, let's say Utah wins 9 games next year and BYU wins 9 games next year in the regular season. Does it just come down to, was I on the right side of the rivalry game? As you transfer, especially when you transfer from an in-state school to an in-state school, evaluating whether or not that was the right move for you in basketball is slightly different than it's going to be in football. Whether you're winning or losing, that's going to matter. But Keanu Tanuvasa, his equation will be a little bit different than Checketts' equation. Everybody I mean, Logan Fano transferred from BYU to Utah, and he has not one time expressed any regret for that. A Utah man am I. He and his brother are super dyed in the wool. They're like all the way Utes now. It's a better fit for them at the University of Utah. If he had been part of that BYU defense last year, he probably would have been enjoying a little bit more bragging rights, at least at this moment. But he's not looking back and saying, no, that was a better situation for me. So everyone's got to evaluate whether you made the right move in the transfer portal. And I can promise you this, more often than not, transferring, you're going to have some second guessing, if not abject and outright regret. You're at least going to question whether or not that was the right thing for you. And that graphic came up about Keba Keita, who's having some success at BYU. I'm not disparaging his time at BYU. I'm not telling you that BYU is a worse basketball team than Utah. I'm just telling you that, like, the ceiling that he thought he was going to experience at BYU is not being reached at this moment. So would he have been better off in his own mind staying at Utah? Maybe we'll get Keba on, and he probably would have to be postseason for him to answer that question, honestly. But just something to think about.
Yeah.
When
and
you look at the numbers, at least.
I think in Keba's case, especially, you can't discount his relationship with Chris Burgess as a reason why he decided to switch.
Sure.
Chris switched schools. Burge switched schools as an assistant coach, and so Keba followed him there. So I think that's probably a big part of the calculus, as they say, when you make a decision like that. And I don't know. We haven't heard if there's a situation like that with Keanu Tanavasa, whoever it was that took the primary role of recruiting him.
Well, it's Sione Pua.
Oh, Puha. Okay.
Like, and there's
out of the loop on that. So maybe that made a bigger deal than, hey, the potential of possibly being able to win more as a second year starter in Utah. Who knows?
Of course, Kyle Whittingham thinks that it was NIL more than anything.
Yeah,
and the Tanuvasa family has kind of like overcompensated and saying, no, it wasn't about that, which makes me think that it was at least somewhat about that. And by the way, all things can be true at once.
Yeah.
You can be like,
it's a pie chart, right? Maybe a big chunk of it's this, big chunk of it's this, big chunk of it's this.
Like, look, they gave me as much or more money as I was going to get. I wanted to be at a place where I think that they might have a better season, or maybe we should take him at his word, and he wanted to be at a place that's like the more spiritual of the two institutions. There's no denying that is BYU comparatively, that the programs are run differently, that the tone of things, the firesides, all that kind of stuff, there's just less of that at Utah. Maybe he really did want that. There's no reason for him to lie about that. Maybe he really didn't want that. Would that have been enough by itself? Probably not. But if they're also going to give you money and they're also going to be a good team, and they also have Sione Pua, who you have a great relationship with and was a huge part of you coming to the University of Utah in the first place, all those things. Pie chart is the right way to say it, James. It's like, look, this is 4 different things, 25% on each. That's why I moved. For Keba, maybe it's Burgess's 90%. Playing time he thought he was going to get. Oh, dang it. So that one didn't actually work out the way I wanted it to. But you got to evaluate that pie chart now and after. You get the benefit of hindsight at some point in your life to look back and be like, did I make the right decision there? Maybe. We're just getting started on a Wednesday. Sean O'Connell Show is always brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Tires, wheels, and accessories for whatever you drive. Stop by your local Les Schwab. The pros there will get the job done right the first time. Let's check in on some bracketology. Jerry Palm from CBS Sports joins us next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Hot lunch is coming right now. Time to talk with Jerry Palm, CBS Sports bracketologist, best in the business. Jerry, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to have you on to talk a little bracketology before we get to the brackets. BYU hands Bill Self the worst loss of his Kansas coaching career.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that?
It's also, I think, the worst loss ever for a team that started the season as the preseason number one. It's obviously impressive. Great performance by BYU. Really helps the tournament resume having a win over Kansas. But gosh, for Kansas, it's just, boy, what a bad week in the mountains there. That's a team that just hasn't really figured it out, and it feels like that's 2 years in a row for them where they just can't quite figure it out. They're not terrible or anything. They'll make the tournament, but it's going to be hard to live up to the preseason expectation, and I think that'll be 2 years in a row if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I was laughing at Coach Self in the post game, talking about the team just needs to get away from one another. We all know that situation, whether it's family, workplace, whatever. Sometimes you just need to not be around that particular group of people. Feels like the wrong time of year, though, to have that feeling coming up for Kansas.
Yeah, because they're not going to get a break.
Yeah,
I mean, unless you give them a day off. But a lot of those guys are probably roommates, so that may not even help the situation much. It's a real mess. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. They've got talent. They'll probably figure it out. But I don't know that they'll ever get to the level this team expected. But for BYU, I mean, that's a team very squarely on the bubble. That's a nice feather in the cap for BYU's tournament resume for sure.
So you've got them in that first four.
Yes, as of Monday.
Looking at coming off a big win like that one, and knowing what is on the slate still for BYU, is this a team that can elevate themselves beyond the bubble with the short time left?
Well, I mean, yes, maybe. Now, the rest of this schedule, there's 3 out of 4 on the road, so that's no fun. Arizona and Iowa State are 2 of those games, and, that's pretty tough. And you get West Virginia at home, and who knows what you're going to get from West Virginia. I mean, they're kind of in a bad way at the moment, but, they've had some big hits as well and are kind of hit and miss season, and that's another bubble team that is going to be feeling pretty desperate. So I don't think there's anything easy left. I have to say, though, I saw BYU at Cincinnati. I was at that game. And that team winning those two, that game yesterday in particular is not quite a performance, really, compared to the one I saw.
I think I'm counting correctly. Eight Big 12 teams in the tournament for you right now?
Sounds about right, yes. And that would include BYU, which is among the last 4 in the current bracket. Yes.
Houston, the highest rated of those at the moment. You've got them projected as a 2 seed. They are the highest ranked team in the Big 12. Is that going to be chalk when we get to tournament time? Are they really the best team definitively from this conference?
Well, I think they are, yes. I mean, Iowa State is capable. Texas Tech is capable. They had a rough night last night, I believe. Or the other night, but Houston, I think, is the best, most consistent team, and I think a big part of that for them is they rely on defense, and it's an outstanding defense, and it's like defense never really takes a night off. I mean, your shots may or may not be falling, but defense doesn't really take a night off. So that having been the backbone of this program, and Kelvin Sampson's coaching style anyway, I think really serves them well, and they have quite a bit of talent too.
Jerry Palm, CBS Sports bracketologist, my guest on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the projections for the upcoming March Madness, which is rapidly approaching. Big 12 right now in the projection, as I just mentioned, with 8 teams in. The best basketball conference in the country is, I guess, the SEC. Are we gonna have to deal with this long term, or is this a fluke?
Oh, you never know. It's one in a row where it's been the best. So, in 1 year is not a trend, but it's a conference that's invested in basketball. They've went out and hired some good coaches. You've got Bruce Pearl in that league. Nate Oates at Alabama is really good. Todd Golden's doing a great job at Florida. Buzz Williams at A&M. They've got good coaches in this league. And they've got the money to invest. They could be, up there contending as one of the best leagues in the country, one of the top maybe 2 or 3 every year. It would be kind of surprising, I think, if it wasn't. But right now it's 1 year, and so we'll see where they go from here. It's kind of weird because they've always been football first, right? And they're still going to be football first. Football will get the bulk of the investment, but they've been good at other sports as well, and there's no reason why they shouldn't also be good at men's basketball.
Well, I mean, when you talk about investment through the Big Ten and the SEC and meetings happening today, by the way, in that effort to continue to make sure that they've got all the access to a football playoff, and then we know the trickle-down economics with football and the rest of college athletics and SEC television contracts and Big Ten television contracts, it all translates to this level of success, I suppose. We've seen how directly investment works out for football championships or the chasing of championships in football. Should we expect that trend to be mirrored in college basketball?
Well, I think generally, yes. Some programs, I'm just thinking of the two-time champion here, UConn, is in a league where, first of all, football, they play Division I football, but they don't play, their Big East is not a football conference, so they play, at least for the moment, as an independent. I think they're going to join a conference, but, that's not a major program for football. So, they're investing, what money they have comparatively, probably more in basketball, men's and women's, where they've been very good. So, but there'll still be teams that can compete, but, in the NIL era and, players, they're going to be dividing resources differently now. So it's just going to be easier for the bigger programs and the bigger conferences to be able to build programs than it will be for others, that even ones that have good programs now, to be able to maintain them. And the part of it is just going to be that the money is going to be so good in some other places that players will go there and coaches will go there as well.
Utah State has been piling up some wins up in Logan. They seem to be change-proof in Logan. Change coaches, they'll figure it out. Players transfer in and out, they'll figure it out. A 9 seed right now in your bracketology. What's your outlook for the Aggies?
Yeah, I just took them off the bubble. I feel comfortable now that I think they're going to make it. Obviously, there's still time to go sideways, but I don't really expect that of Utah State. They've had a good year, been near the top of the Mountain West. I mean, it's currently New Mexico, of course, but they've had a good season, and I think we'll see them again in the NCAA tournament. My only concern for Utah State and the other Mountain West teams is I felt like last year that league did not get the respect that I felt that they deserved from the committee in terms of seeding. They got 16th in, but New Mexico ended up being a bid stealer. And if I'm not mistaken, Utah State was the highest seed as an 8. I got to see them in Indianapolis. They played Purdue, and that was not fair to me, to Utah State, to have to play Purdue in the second round. They were a better team than that and should have had an opportunity to play a more beatable team in the second round, because if they'd been seeded properly, they could have, but they weren't. And so it was unfortunate for them.
Couple more minutes with Jerry Palm, CBS Sports bracketologist on the Sean O'Connell Show. So Utah, that at one point, I mean, I remember when I moved to the States in the early 90s, I had to learn, coming from Minnesota, this is a basketball state. The Utah Jazz are the biggest show in town. University of Utah is a great basketball program. They're going to be, competing for national championships or whatever. And unfortunately, Craig Smith has not yet been able to take this team to an NCAA tournament. Is there a fix in sight for Utah? How far off are they when you take a look at that team?
Well, it's the nice thing about college sports these days. This is another team that beat Kansas, just last week, of course.
Yeah.
Is that you with the transfer portal, you could turn over your roster in a hurry. So you don't have to. It's not like a 3-year rebuild. Everything's like a 3-year rebuild. Now it can be a 3-minute rebuild if you go out and get enough guys in that period of time, which you can do with the transfer portal. So I don't know what he's going to do specifically and how much he can invest in players, but if he's got some money to invest in players, he can go out and get the right ones and ones that fit what he wants to do as a coach and how he wants to play. Then you can turn it around in a year. You can go from not just kind of kicking around and not doing so great to near the top of your league that quickly if you can get the right players that fit what you want to do.
There's always interest in the tournament. We know that everyone fills out a bracket. There's lots of betting, all that kind of stuff. I think there'll be extra interest in the home state because the Utah Jazz are tanking for a high lottery pick, and everyone is hoping it's going to be Cooper Flagg. It's probably not going to be. They're not bad enough to get the number 1 overall pick, I don't think. So you've been watching a lot of college basketball, like you always do. Who's the second or third or fourth best guy that Utah Jazz fans should be keeping an eye on when tournament time rolls around?
Well, I mean, Janai Broom at Auburn could end up being the player of the year as well. He's been terrific and has led that team to the very top of college basketball. So, those two guys should be 1-2 for me. I mean, I'm not an NBA guy. I'm so invested in college basketball, I don't have a lot of time to follow the NBA. But there are definitely some great players out there. So, but those two have stood out as the two best in college basketball this year. So if you can get one of those two, I think you're going to be pretty happy with what you get. There's some good, guards or whatever, guys that can handle the ball. And Cooper Flagg is one of those guys that can do everything. He's tremendous. But one of those two guys, for me, the Broom and Flagg are the two best players in college basketball and should do very well in the NBA.
You always reserve the right to alter your answer when we get through conference tournaments, and hopefully we'll have you on again before March Madness actually kicks off. But the low seed right now, or I should say the high seed, the team that is in a Cinderella position that could actually make a Cinderella run.
Ooh, okay. I like Drake out of Missouri Valley. Drake is, it's funny. They lost their coach to West Virginia, and they just keep right on going. Normally at that level, you lose your coach, and there's like a rebuild, and that's what's happened at Indiana State, which competed with Drake last year for the Missouri Valley title. Their coach would go to St. Louis, and they haven't been the same this year at all. But Drake still is, and that's a program that knows how to win. And then I'll give you one more that I actually saw, and that could have a high enough seed to give them a chance, and that's Yale out of the Ivy League.
Ooh.
Yale's got, I've watched some Ivy League basketball this year just because it's been on, but most of those teams don't have the athletes to compete, but Yale does. Yale's got some guys that are strong, they've got some guys that are quick, and they've got some guys that can shoot. And so if Yale gets a good matchup where they're not athletically overwhelmed, then they've got a shot as well.
Jerry, you're a sick man with how much college basketball you take in, but we love it because we benefit so much from your expertise. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on.
That's Jerry Palm. He's the best. We'll have him on again as the March Madness tournament approaches very, very rapidly. He likes where BYU's at currently, though, on the bubble. He took Utah State off the bubble last week. Very confident that this team makes in. He's got BYU as an 11 and Utah State as a 9. Utah not in the picture. They would have to win the Big 12 conference tournament in order to force their way into the March Madness bracket. Not outside the realm of possibility, but going to be some very tough uphill sledding for Craig Smith and his team there. 8-bid league, the Big 12 conference. Is that where you thought it would be at the beginning of the year, James?
Yeah, I would have guessed 7 or 8.
Okay.
If not, yeah, I guess you can't reasonably predict there'd be more than that. That's a lot of teams from one conference, but I would guess that. What's been the big surprise has been how dominant the SEC has been. No one really saw. I mean, everyone knows that there's some good programs in the SEC, but no one saw double-digit teams,
I'm
potentially for the SEC.
13 right now.
Yeah. Could be. I believe that would be the most ever. I think the Big East had 10 or 11 in a couple of years, but an ACC probably set a record at one point, but 13 I believe would be a record.
Arkansas and Texas at 11, Vanderbilt at 10, along with Oklahoma. You've got 6 seeds going to Mississippi State and Ole Miss, Missouri in a 5-seed position, Kentucky a 4 seed, Tennessee and Texas A&M both 2 seeds, 3 1 seeds. There are only 4 1 seeds in the bracket, James. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, all projected number 1 seeds by
Is that
Jerry
good?
Palm's bracketology.
To have 3 1 seeds, is that good, OC? Man.
If the SEC starts to become a dominant force in basketball,
Yeah, it's unfair.
and in football, they're already so obnoxious.
Unfair. And they're kind of a power in baseball too.
They're a power in baseball. They're a power in softball. They're a power in gymnastics. They're a power in everything.
Yeah, it just means more, OC.
I hate it. I really don't like it.
This was supposed to be the thing, the upside to moving to the Big 12, OC, is, oh, yeah, you're going to be in the best basketball conference in America. Nope. SEC's like, we'll take that too.
Yeah, that also belongs to us. $1,000 cash money. That's all you need. Bothers me. All right, we'll get to the hot lunch in the Sean O'Connell Show. The NFL is once again headed to South America. I'll tell you the number one thing that needs to be taken care of for this to be sustainable. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
2nd down and 7. Just shy of the 33-yard line for Philadelphia. Hurts has Barkley in the backfield. He works out of the shotgun. Takes the snap. Rush is coming. Looking down right side. Throwing. It's there. A.J. Brown's got it. 35-yard line, 30. Coming across the near side of the field to the 20. Turns on the Jets at the 10. And he's in for the touchdown. 67 yards. Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown.
First of all, amazing song. Love me some Billy Joel and Piano Man. Jalen Hurts, 67-yard passing touchdown highlight to A.J. Brown. That was from last year's Sao Paulo, Brazil NFL game, courtesy of Westwood One. Scott Graham, Mike Mayock on the call. The NFL is going back to Sao Paulo. The copycatting of the NBA and trying to expand an NFL brand and game to be a global phenomenon, that effort continues.
I thought the NBA did nothing right, OC. Everyone's been telling me the NBA does nothing right.
The NBA does a lot of things wrong, and they acknowledge that they do a lot of things wrong, but the global expansion thing they have done absolutely right.
And we've heard Spence Checketts talk about this. He's been one that said they focus too much on the entertainment part of things and not enough on the basketball. I would also say that they probably focus too much on the global domination part of things and not enough on the basketball and the core fans here in the United States who love basketball. But like they act like it's a game of Risk, which we've talked about on the show before. You're not going to beat soccer, Adam Silver. So maybe try to get more interest locally. But with that focus, they've done a great job of growing the game. It's become probably the second or third most popular team sport in the world.
The interesting thing about NFL football is that nobody really plays it. You know what I mean? Like soccer is the number one team sport in the world because everyone can play soccer, right? Basketball takes just another, like a small extra level of commitment for a basketball facility, all right? Because you got to put a decently level floor, and you have to have a couple of basketball standards, and hopefully you measure properly to 10 feet. We've all been, if you've traveled the world at all, especially the third world, you have seen some really janky basketball hoops.
Yeah.
Right? James, we put in a basketball court at this project I worked on in Zambia. And
Shout out to Zambia.
When I tell you that this thing, like the concrete on this thing was the most mysterious concrete I've ever encountered in my life, because when we poured it, it looked like regular concrete. Over the course of the next, I guess probably year, it became a slick surface, like a wood floor with socks on, but
no grip
grip at all, James. It was like glass for some reason.
I feel like there's a few parks around here that have that kind of.
I don't know what
that for whatever reason
the wrong mix, like
yeah.
whether it's too much concrete mix or not, or I have no idea what went wrong.
Just more gravel in there, it's sticking out.
But it looks great. It looks aesthetically. It looked great, and then it became this expanse of obsidian glass that you just cannot keep your footing on no matter what. So not ideal. All right.
Yeah.
In any case, that was one of the things with the Sao Paulo game last year. The playing surface, right? The NFL players were sliding all over the place. The grass, I guess, too sodden, was just chunking up all over the place. And nobody. That's what Sao Paulo's got to figure out. Because if you're trying to expand your game internationally, you do require some level of enthusiasm from the participants. If you're talking about sending NFL players to Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is, look, that's a direct flight from Houston, Texas. You can get there, right? I think Miami you can fly. Like, it's not the end of the world travel-wise. And these guys all obviously charter. It's like an
8-hour flight. Okay,
yeah,
that's not the worst.
It's gonna be like an 8-9 hour flight for those guys.
It's not traveling to Saudi Arabia, right?
Yes, they'll be fine. they'll enjoy the process enough that. But when these guys immediately after games like this, their first reaction is of complaint, and the first reaction of the storytellers, the folks on the air, the people that are on Sports Center afterwards, and when the first thing that they start talking about is the complaint about the facilities, the surface or whatever, it does two things. It makes your players not enjoy the experience. Even the ones that would otherwise enjoy it are not going to enjoy it. And the host country and the fans that might be at least curious enough to like give your thing a chance, if the first thing they hear about is how, oh, Brazil doesn't know what they're doing, this playing surface sucks, this arena sucks, we don't like this place, Brazilian fans are not going to – those people are the most fierce national pride individuals that I've ever met in my life. Like, there's a lot of Brazilians in the MMA space. You can't insult Brazil. You could be like, yeah, you know what? I don't like Brazil. It's too humid. That's not even acceptable. If you start saying your playing surfaces are not adequate for us, they're going to turn it off. So the NFL's got to get that figured out this time. Because if you go 2 years in a row.
They won't let you come back.
If you go 2 years in a row and you're talking trash on what they did to like roll out what they think is roll out the red carpet for you and you don't like it, they're just going to be like, no, don't come back here. We hate you now. We hate your game. We hate your American ideals that everything has to be perfect for you. Get out of here. So
why don't you try Nicaragua next time? We won't let you back here.
Yeah. Argentina, I think, would be a good place to try some NFL football.
Yeah.
Uruguay. Maybe we could do one like, isn't there a pretty large expanse of grass at Machu Picchu? It seems like all of those pictures I see of people.
There's a football field in there.
There's like a big giant expanse of grass. You could play a little NFL game down Machu Picchu, high altitude. Let's go.
Yeah, altitude's gonna be a problem.
Ride
Machu Picchu.
Ride the donkey. Well, they played in Mexico City before.
True.
Mexico City is the highest capital in the world.
Good point.
So you could do it in Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
Have everyone like Jalen Hurts riding a donkey to get up that switchback path.
Yes, as part of the starting lineup announcements, they have them ride up on the donkey.
All right. You know what? We'll ask Scott Mitchell about these foreign endeavors for the NFL. Chargers going to open their season in Sao Paulo. Scott Mitchell next on the Sean O'Connell Show as we begin hour number 2, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Scott Mitchell joining us here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Scott Mitchell, now the host of Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, leading into my show, and, of course, over on our sister station as well. Scott, welcome. How are you?
I feel like I'm on every station that's humanly possible. It's like if you're under a rock, you can hear us. So we're everywhere. Actually, it's really fun. I just started this. I get to talk for an hour. So I just give you the down and let's just get into it. Give the things that I love to talk about, the things that I think are most relevant, the things that give some fun insight. Got some fun guests going to come on, so I'm just having fun, Sean. Wow. It's good to be on here.
It's fun to have you back in the building.
Well, I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
So we were just talking about the NFL returning, making the announcement, saying the LA Chargers are going to open their season in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the global expansion that we've seen in the NBA. They're at least efforting that in NFL football, and that goes all the way back to your playing days. They started these efforts with the expansion first into Europe and Mexico and places like that. Sao Paulo is it's not only distant geographically, it is culturally very distant from the United States and what makes NFL football popular here. Last year, there was a huge problem with the playing surface, and the players were hating it. But going back to your days of being in the league, an opportunity like this one, you and your teammates get amped over stuff like that, or is it like, this is a business trip and it just is a really long business trip this time?
When I played, it was only in the preseason, so I played in Berlin and I played in Japan. And both of the times I played for the Miami Dolphins, and at that time I was a backup, so the preseason was my Super Bowl.
Yeah,
so it was a serious business trip for me. Everyone else was having a good time. A lot of our players drank a lot of sake and had a lot of sushi when we were in Japan. Not me, So it was cool though. I mean, it was fun. The trips were long and brutal, but it was preseason. So even if it still wasn't, as a player, and I watch these games and because I know the travel, like it's brutal. And not only that, when I was in the World League, we went over and played in Frankfurt, Germany. So it's hard to travel and it's hard to play and to play at a high level when your body's trying to get used to a different time clock. And then it's not just when you're there, it's like after, because then the next week and your sleep schedules are off, and giving your body enough time to mentally and physically recover from a normal week is a process, and it's a science, and it's something you have to really be responsible and take care of. When you have that added travel, it's a brutal thing. And the studies have shown, like teams from the West Coast that have to go to even the East Coast, the percentage of winning drops dramatically. And if you have to do it 2 times in a week, they never win. You never win. So to go to Brazil is a tough thing. And I appreciate the NFL expanding, its thing, because, I mean, let's face it, 3 billion people watch the World Cup in soccer, and trying to capture what that is. I mean, they had a record viewing of the Super Bowl this year, and it was 137 million. And I understand it's a long tournament, the World Cup, and it's, every 4 years, and it's the world. So of course it'd draw a bigger audience, but I think it's like, where do you go? Where do you expand? What do you do? The challenge I think the NFL has with it, it's like, okay, fine, we have these exhibition games, but you have to have years. Like, the NFL started, almost 100. I think it's been over 100 years now, or close to that. I know it was 75 years in 1994. So you're probably 100 years at this point. And you have all these little communities that they start little league programs, and these players see their heroes, and they develop it over time, and in these other countries, it's been soccer. That's so it's hard to change people's mindset unless you don't have that constant, a team there, and it's a constant presence, and you build it organically throughout these years, and they don't have that ability. I know it's popular. I mean, the times that I've been over there, Sean, it's like huge crowds, crazy crowds, like excited about, and this was in the 90s, so it's very popular. But if I'm a player and I have to go in the regular season, I hate it. I would hate it. I would not want to do. It's like, this is not fair that every team in the NFL doesn't have to do this. I think it gives you a disadvantage from the wear and tear of your body that other teams don't have to put up with.
Well, the Eagles had to do it last year, and they won a Super Bowl, so they're okay.
Well, see, that's the problem. They should have lost the Super Bowl because now they've ruined it for everybody else. Those stupid Eagles.
So maybe
I hate Philadelphia fans to begin with. So now it's just
maybe Sao Paulo's good luck.
Well, if you're gonna do it, it's better to do it like the first game of the season.
Yeah.
So when you said it was the first game of the season, okay, that's not the worst thing that could happen. And if it proves to be, hey, whoever goes over and plays overseas wins the Super Bowl, everyone's going to want to do it. So maybe it's a good thing.
For those of you wondering the time difference, because this is the LA Chargers, right? So they're a Pacific Coast team. It's like if you were playing on an island an hour east of New York. It's East Coast time plus 1 hour in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So that's a 4 hour, right? 4 hour time difference from West Coast to East Coast plus 1 for the Chargers.
And you're going to cross an equator on the way. So
correct.
It's just like
so your toilet's going to spin the other way when you flush.
Will it be winter? Will it be winter there? Or
it'll be spring, right? Because it's fall. Yeah, it's fall here, so it'll be.
That's a bummer. So Ecuador is on the equator.
Yeah.
Speaking of the equator.
Yeah.
And if you're on the north side of it, it spins clockwise, and if you're on the south side of it, it's counterclockwise. And they do a demonstration, by the way.
Really?
Flush a toilet. Yeah.
Never been to Ecuador.
And then they put the toilet right on the equator.
And it doesn't spin.
Which way do you think it spins?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
For real?
It goes right down.
Ecuadorian toilets are now the most fascinating thing on the Toronto
Scott,
show.
you just inadvertently joined a conversation we had first segment. Things that we feel like we just always knew, but we don't remember if we learned it in school or some other way.
Yeah.
Like,
the way it came up was, like we were talking about Utah basketball ripping the heart out of Kansas basketball.
Right.
And like I made the visual of like it's beating in your hand. And we're like, when you're a kid, you see that on Indiana Jones, and you're like, yep, that's what happens.
Sure.
Or, a chicken gets its head cut off, it runs around.
Right.
Or someone says like, there's always these things.
Yeah.
And you don't remember where you learn them, but you just grow up with these certainties your whole life.
Yeah.
And that was the toilets flushing the other way is one of those. I don't know when I learned it or where I learned it, but now you've confirmed that it's real.
It is real. But the kicker, man, is it just goes straight down on the equator. So the equator is literally a spot. Like it is the very middle of, and it's not big. Just so you know, it's not a large. The equator is not a swath of like 40 yards wide, or it's like feet.
Really?
Yes.
That's wild to me because you would think, with the grand scale of how big the world itself is, that magnetic phenomenon or whatever would extend, like a football field maybe.
My former business partner, he went there on a vacation with his family, and he goes, I didn't equate that Ecuador was actually on the equator, that it was named after, because the equator runs right through Ecuador, until literally after this demonstration. He says, so that's why they named it Ecuador.
That's why they named it Equator.
Yeah.
Basically.
Like, I didn't realize that. Yeah. And he's a smart man too, by the way.
Scott Mitchell's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, in studio with us because he was here this morning recording his own show, The Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, that you can hear from 10 to 11 a.m. on ESPN 700 and 92.1.
I get him warmed
FM.
up for you, Sean.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, better than that schlub Dan Patrick.
Yeah.
Who listens to him? You know what I mean?
that talking hairdo. That's all he is.
Yeah.
I heard you talking about this on your show this morning, which is another great benefit to me because I can steal topics and things that come from your mind. Cam Ward, we saw the headline that Cam Ward, the former Incarnate Word, Washington State, and Miami quarterback, has issued like an ominous warning to NFL GMs.
He's thrown the gauntlet down.
He's like, hey, if you don't draft me, I'll remember. I don't know how many teams he's going to have to remember because he's probably going in the top 5.
Right.
So it's not like that. Amon-Ra St. Brown. People remember Amon-Ra St. Brown from his USC days. He's been with the Lions. We saw this on Hard Knocks. They sat him down, and he named like all 13 receivers that got drafted before him.
Yeah.
Cam Ward's going to have to name Shedeur Sanders. And that's going to be it.
So Jeff George, Andre Ware, Neil O'Donnell, Peter Tom Willis, Kerry Conklin, Troy Taylor, and Mike Buck.
Those are the quarterbacks taken before you.
before me. This is
What is it with you quarterbacks?
no
What is it with you football players?
And I was pissed for years. I'm like, those guys suck. All of them. I don't care. They're terrible.
Well, you know what's funny is you just gave like 4 names that no one's ever heard of.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they were wrong on at least half.
Well, Troy Taylor was the offensive coordinator at Utah. He's the head coach at Stanford now. And he was,
Troy Taylor.
that Troy Taylor, yeah, was drafted by the Jets. Exactly. That Troy Taylor.
Look, I love Troy Taylor as a coach. I really think he's a great coach. I've been around that guy.
Yeah.
Not exactly a physical specimen.
No.
Not exactly an imposing
No.
presence.
No. No. No, and that was the thing, and I just like, what in the world? And it does. It's an infuriating thing. The thing about Cam Ward and his statement, it's one of two things. It's like I'm calling my shot, like Babe Ruth or Joe Namath, or like I have this extreme confidence, or the other side of it is I'm worried. I'm there. Maybe I'm not going to be as good. Maybe I'm going to be, and what you have to learn, and you have to get away from. The draft means nothing. All the draft means is I got my opportunity. And if you're in the right situation, it really doesn't matter. Ask Joe Montana, ask Tom Brady, ask Brock Purdy, ask a lot of guys. I mean, we talked about John Randall. John Randall wasn't drafted, and they had 12 rounds. The guy had a Hall of Fame career, and he only had one team interested in him, and it's the only team he needed. So it sucks. I'm just because you want to be first. We all do.
Yeah. Well, especially now where the contracts are structured. They lay it out. Like if he's the number 3 pick, he's got a $25 million signing bonus. Yeah. If he's the number 103 pick, then it's like $2 million.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's huge. Your draft position initially, but it's that second contract. That's the life changing. That's the generational money that you. And so you want to be able to be in a position to play well for that second contract.
By the way, speaking of NFL contracts, the league announced that the salary cap is going to go up $22 million in 2025. So an extra $22 million for your salary cap.
Yeah.
Hard cap league still going to stay that way in the NFL, which I think is one of the reasons why people love the NFL. Because it evens the playing field at least somewhat.
You always have a chance.
Yeah.
That, at least you feel like you do. So I like it.
Did you ever find yourself the target of crime or thievery because people knew your schedule and knew that you would be on the road at certain times when you were a high-profile professional athlete?
There's a lot of things that I think you block out of your mind that if you actually really thought about the common sense of it, I think you'd probably go because I lived out in the country when I played for the Detroit Lions. People knew where I lived. I didn't live in you could drive up to my front door and knock on my door if you wanted. I lived down a dirt road. It wasn't easy to get to, and I never had anyone do that. We used to talk about like. You remember, Monica Seles? She was in between tennis player. She was in between sets, and some guy came and stabbed her.
Yeah.
And we started, and that happened when I was playing, and I'm like, why did we not have? So there's some crazy out there that would just come down on the field or do something insane. Or if you remember, was it Black Sunday? It was a movie, and it was set around a Super Bowl, and this guy hijacked the blimp. And he was going to crash it into the stadium, pre 9/11. This was like in the 70s.
Okay. And
we're like, why hasn't anyone done or thought that to this point? Those are the crazy things that, like, the toilet spinning backwards. Like you don't want to think about. But the reality is, you're so much more vulnerable than I think you ever really realize. And maybe we just don't. We don't think about it because to think about it would be almost debilitating. You'd never want to leave your house.
The reason I asked that question, I'm sure you're aware, but they've caught 7 individuals and charged them with there's a crime ring from Chile. James put it in his update where these guys are they're going to professional athletes' homes when they're gone and stealing jewelry and other valuables from home. I mean, I guess Scott Mitchell probably wasn't wearing $500,000 worth of jewelry most places.
Yeah, the most jewelry I think I've ever had is a wedding ring, maybe a watch. And I mean, you know, it was a nice watch. It wasn't a Rolex or anything. Yeah, I mean, if you have a nice house, you think the security would be good enough to like keep people out, even if you weren't around? I don't know. I guess maybe what's the point of having security if, you know? I mean, I'm thinking of gates. I'm thinking of
I don't know.
You know, I with all the money that the players make today, I'd certainly have some precaution.
Get a big dog. You know, here's the thing though. Like, I don't support thievery in any form. Joe Burrow was targeted by this.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow bought one of those Batmobiles from the Christopher Nolan trilogy. You know what I'm talking about? The cool-looking Batmobile?
Yeah.
He bought one of those. He has one. It's like $2.9 million or something like that. I would steal that from Joe Burrow if I had an opportunity.
Did they didn't steal that.
No, they didn't steal that. But, like, I could see the temptation, I guess, is what I'm saying. That when you find out these athletes have things that are unattainable for you as a human being, you'd be like, well, Joe Burrow, he's not going to be home next Sunday. I'm going to go steal the Batmobile from him.
Okay, if we're talking about stealing, first job I ever had, I was a teller at a bank in downtown Salt Lake.
Oh, no.
And in working there, I go, I know how I could rob this bank and get away with it.
That's how your mind works?
And I was concocting a plan and going, I think I could do this. And no one would know.
Thankfully,
I thought about this for a long period of time.
Thankfully, you took a different career turn.
Oh man, it was actually First Security Bank on 4th South in Maine, so
Really?
not far from me. Yeah,
It's right around the corner from here.
I know.
right.
I think about it all the time. I'm like, I could have totally gotten away with that.
If you're listening from First Security Bank, Scott Mitchell did not rob you. He's just saying that if he did, he would have known how
Yeah,
and
totally.
gotten away with it.
Yeah, that was Look, we all have those thoughts, the chaotic thoughts in our mind. Like we don't always act on all of our thoughts.
How good are you at quieting that chaotic voice in your mind?
It depends on the day. There's some days it's kind of hard.
I can't relate to having like thief plotting some big heist like you Scott Mitchell, but I do have the I don't know if it's temptation, but the wild thoughts of like if I'm walking on a sidewalk, I'm like bus is coming and I can see it miles away coming my direction. I can just step off here.
What? That's not good.
No, it's not anything suicidal. It's just like sometimes I have to walk farther away from the edge of the sidewalk so that I don't just accidentally step off.
You get those thoughts, yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
Or if I'm up on Angel's Landing or something, I could just take a step this way.
You know, hearing your thoughts, James, I feel better about myself. I don't feel so.
I'll have to look it up. I'll
I'll
have to look up. There's a name for the condition. It's one of those conditions that they have one of the really long Latin names for that I have to look that up.
You're gonna have to look that up.
I have an ex-wife who took half my money, and maybe a time or two I had a maybe not as so pleasant thought about
don't bring that to the
about
air.
her. You know, I'll just say that.
As long as we're being confessional, my first job was at Hoagie Yogi Teriyaki Sticks. You remember that little restaurant?
Yeah, Hoagie Yogi, loved it.
Okay, so Hoagie Yogi, the yogi part was frozen yogurt, and we had this machine that you would mix in stuff to the frozen yogurt with this drill bit. It was a very strange invention.
Okay.
But they were like hockey pucks made of cookie dough or made of whatever.
Right.
And the owner, shout out Russ Cherry, I'm sorry I did this to you when I was 15 years old. He's like, look, I don't like wasting stuff. So if you drop something on the ground and it like one of these hockey pucks of cookie dough break,
right.
If you drop it on the ground, don't serve it to anybody, but you can eat it.
Yeah.
And so
I see where this is going.
So your boy occasionally
why not
would just be like, oh, dropped it, boom, and like a chunk would break off. And then, of course, 3-second rule, 30-second rule, 1-minute rule, whatever. It's frozen.
Yeah.
And I'd just be like, whoops, oh, that one broke. I got to eat it now. So yeah, that was the intrusive thought of my young days.
Okay. I just think that's ingenious. Like, hey.
Because it's not stealing. If
That's
it's
the
broke.
loophole. Like that's understanding loopholes in the rules, right?
I'm just dropping every ingredient from the kitchen. Oh, look, I made a sandwich and dropped it. Now I have to eat it. That's not good, kids. Don't do that. If you're a young person and you're taking your first fast food job or whatever, don't do that. Do not steal.
And don't rob a bank, okay? And
Definitely
stay on
don't.
the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Don't jump in front of a bus.
Yeah,
Don't-
jeez.
Don't do that. By the way, call. Is it 988 the suicide hotline? Anyone listening that might have been triggered by that?
Yeah, please.
988 is the suicide
Okay.
hotline.
Did you look up your condition's name, James?
I'm looking it
Okay,
up.
James is looking it up.
I mean you use the common term for it, intrusive thoughts.
Okay.
But there's a longer name that I'm still efforting here.
All right. Okay. Scott, when can people hear you?
You can listen from 10 to 11 on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. And then later in the day, you can jump on to 103.9, 98.3 FM, The Fan. So I kind of encroach on your show just a little bit. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But you can get the podcast version anytime, anywhere.
Anytime, anywhere. Scott Mitchell and Sean O'Connell show available at
Yes.
ESPN700sports.com, etc. Thanks for being here. It's good to have you in the
Always
studio.
a pleasure, Sean. Yep. Love it. Thank you.
The Utah football legend and longtime NFL veteran, and thankfully almost but not quite bank robber, Scott Mitchell. Always appreciate his time. All right, lots to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. Tough loss for Utah women's basketball. A longtime rival of Kyle Whittingham's is now in the NFL. We'll tell you who I'm talking about next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Now's your chance to win a pair of Runnin' Utes home game tickets. Utes to 33986. Text the word Utes to 33986 for a chance to win a pair of tickets. Saturday, March 1st against Arizona State is your next home matchup. Tickets available at utahtickets.com. Utes to 33986. Sean O'Connell Show rolling on a Wednesday, midpoint of your week. It'll be downhill after this one. Just had a fun conversation with Scott Mitchell. We got a little confessional here on the show, okay? We do the Friday airing of grievances. We could maybe do like a Wednesday confession if we had to. I don't know if people need to get that kind of stuff off their chests. Glad Scott never actually robbed a bank. Call of the Void is someone text in 877-353-0700. I've never heard that term, but 6602 says Call of the Void is that term we're looking for when you think about, stepping off of a tall building or whatever.
Yeah, and Call of the Void. There it is.
Intrusive thoughts.
But yeah, this simple form is just to say intrusive thoughts. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, you think, oh, are you okay, James, when you say something like that? By the way,
it's totally normal.
988 suicide hotline, by the way. But that's the National Suicide Hotline. But it's not it's not just if you're having intrusive thoughts about hurting yourself when with someone that might be having Call of the Void kind of thing. You could be fine otherwise, mental health wise, and still have this kind of like, what if I just did this?
Well, yeah,
and you know what would happen. You know, if I did that, I would seriously hurt myself, maybe die. So you don't actually do it, but your brain goes, but what would happen?
Yeah, I think that's total. You know what?
But 988, National Suicide Hotline.
Maybe a less terrifying notion. If you've ever gone on like a hike and you've been at the top of some precipice and there's a large rock nearby or like a log, doesn't everybody go like, wow, what would happen if I just pushed that thing and got it rolling down the hill? Not with the assuming there's nobody at the bottom of the hill, but you just want to like, we have this like weird little destructive alien brain in there that's just like, what would happen if I push this rock and it just goes hurtling down and, I don't know, pulverizes itself into a million pieces or destroys a bunch of trees? I mean, people do it. There's like YouTube videos of all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's all right.
It's like that, except with your own
your own body, mortality,
your own person.
Anyway,
it's the weirdest thing though, because there were times, and I've had these kinds of Call of the Void moments basically my whole life, and there were times where I'm like, wait a minute, like, should I be making sure I'm okay? But I learned that no, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have any kind of mental health problems, that kind of depression, but you still have that part of your brain that's like, let's just. What if we tried that?
Where you intellectually know what would happen,
yeah,
but you're also just like, what if it happened?
It's the weirdest thing.
It's a little disturbing, but I think pretty normal. 877-353-0700 if there's any other random terms you want us to explore on the show today. Saw this, and not a small story for me, because I think, and maybe I'm wrong here, I think that folks in the state of Utah, especially during Utah's Pac-12 years, but maybe even, the BYU independence years, certainly Utah's Pac-12 years, we became familiar with David Shaw and Stanford on a lot of different fronts. They recruited a lot of players from the state of Utah, a lot of elite players. He hired LDS coaches who ended up recruiting LDS players at Stanford. They were happy to work around missions. Not every national, like, high-caliber program is willing to do that. That's something, obviously, Utah and BYU have been doing for a very long time. David Shaw was one of the early adopters of the Pac-12 footprint when Utah was joining that conference, to kind of come in and realize what was happening here, the groundswell of talent coming out of the state of Utah, recruited a lot of really, really good players. And obviously there's a ton of connection. Utah got some rollback guys, people who played for David Shaw at Stanford. You saw him on NFL pre-draft coverage, where he would actually show his personality and show his charisma and then he'd go back to being like the Bill Belichick style head coach when he was in a official Stanford capacity. So I've been fascinated with David Shaw. He always expressed a lot of admiration for the way that Kyle Whittingham ran his program. Those two teams had some epic matches against one another, just some slobber knockers. Stanford, with the intellectual brutality slogan, was built more like Utah for a very long time, and Utah was built more like Stanford for a very long time.
Fantastic slogan, by the way. Intellectual brutality.
You know what got stolen, by the way, that Rice University tries to use it now?
Is Rice a high academic standard institution? I guess so.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And their coaches, a bunch of Stanford coaches, went to Rice.
Okay.
And they were just like, hey, let's use all these same stickers and just color them blue. Yeah. So they tried. Rice tried to
R
adopt
instead of a script R instead of an S.
You can't do it. You can't do
right.
it. Sorry.
Yeah. So Rice, what is that? The Harvard of Texas? Is that what they call themselves?
That's okay. Is that what? That can't be a real slogan.
No.
Like,
but isn't that a nickname for Stanford, Harvard of the West?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rice, Harvard of South
Harvard
Texas.
Harvard of the humid.
Harvard of the
coastal
Gulf,
America.
Harvard of the Gulf states.
Of the Gulf of whatever you call it.
Yeah, the Gulf of whatever you want to call it, apparently.
So anyway, David Shaw has been one of the guys that I've followed his career as closely as I followed any college coach's career. And obviously, things went really sour at Stanford. He ended up stepping away from that position. I have friends that are in that Stanford community who were telling me for years, like, hey, there's trouble in paradise there. The players don't like David Shaw. It's going to all, come crumbling down someday. While he was nationally, universally respected as one of the best coaches. And then, of course, they had the rash of injuries and recruiting slowed down with the transfer portal and the NIL era. And Stanford football is not what it was under Jim Harbaugh and then when David Shaw took over. But he is a good coach. And he has now joined the Detroit Lions staff. Detroit, obviously, best team in the NFC this year in the regular season, early exit from the playoffs, kind of unceremonious end to the whole hype train of a season. They lose both of their coordinators, and David Shaw will be back in a coaching capacity, and he'll be with the Detroit Lions, and there's obviously some local connections on that Detroit Lions roster as well. But this is a guy who was, we'll have to ask. I'll ask Coach Witt next time. I would have perceived David Shaw for the bulk of Kyle Whittingham's years in the Pac-12 conference as his coaching rival. If that's a thing in conference play, they were both long tenured. They had admiration for one another. Their teams battled back and forth in high-stakes matchups. Utah upset Stanford when Stanford was a number 5 team in the country. Stanford caused Utah problems when that power dynamic had switched a little bit. I would have perceived David Shaw as Kyle Whittingham's Pac-12 coaching rival, I think more than anybody else.
When they're both programs were tasked with, we have to do more with less.
Yes.
Too, from a recruiting standpoint. And both coaches did a remarkable job of that for a long period of time until about 2019-ish for David Shaw. And it was really after that it started to go downhill a little bit.
Yeah, like post-COVID, Stanford was just not Stanford.
Yeah.
It got really weird. But, yeah, I think 2018, 2019, Stanford started to – the foundation that they had built, competing for championships and being Rose Bowl presence and the Harbaugh kind of like blueprint, started to fall to pieces. And David Shaw, I think, hung on at Stanford maybe a year or two too long because whatever it was had escaped him. He didn't have the voice in the locker room that he did at one point. But this guy knows football. He's a brilliant football mind, and he's now with Detroit. Dan Campbell, the Detroit head coach, just continues to be a guy who, in my opinion, we'll see how this thing works out, but it seems like a guy who just makes great decisions with this coaching staff, with what he wants to do with the team culture, how he manages his players. As much as you can pull the little taglines and the biting people's kneecaps off and the sort of low-hanging fruit, the guy knows football, and not only that, he knows organizational tactics. He knows how to build and delegate and create a winning machine. And I'm really fascinated to see if Detroit can ever actually get over that Super Bowl hump with him in place, because I think he's an awesome coach.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's a good hire from his potential as a coach, as a strategist, as a player development guy. And he doesn't have to recruit to bring guys in. He doesn't have to he's not responsible for the talent that's on the roster, which is one of the reasons why his tenure at Stanford ended as disappointingly as it did, is that he just couldn't keep up, especially in the new NIL era. They just couldn't keep up with the Joneses recruiting-wise.
Which, by the way, is actually insane to me, because Stanford's endowment is larger than any school west of the Mississippi. And I know that endowment and athletic boosters are two separate things, and you can't steal from the endowment to boost your athletic program. But what endowment is dedication from your alumni to the school, effectively. And for whatever reason, as successful as Stanford alums are for the most part, and the billionaires and the multi-millionaires and the business owners and the executives and all that stuff that have come out of Stanford, there's a disconnect between Stanford football, not even Stanford athletics, other athletic programs there. Like, they tried to get rid of the wrestling program. In 5 minutes, there were a bunch of former Stanford wrestlers that were just like, you're not doing this. Here's $50 million. You don't have an excuse. Keep the program going.
Yeah, it's they seem to have more pride in their Olympic sports than they do in the football and men's basketball.
It's really wild. Like
and women's basketball included, by the way, with Tara Vanderveer, who just retired.
All-time winningest college coach. Tara Vanderveer would have a hard time getting the kind of support and success. Now, Stanford always had that thing where it's the most beautiful campus in America, probably. It's in the Bay Area, which is a phenomenal place to live if you have the right amount of resources. And when you're a student athlete at Stanford, you have the right amount of resources. You're in your own little microcosm, your own little community. And obviously it's setting you up for success, the networking and all that kind of stuff. But that networking at Stanford just falls short of the standard set at every other. Like, BYU is Stanford light when it comes to the, hey, come here, make connections. We will boost you up, and we will, it's a great school, and there's a lot of business owners that come out of here. It's like 1% of the 100% of Stanford, right? But BYU alum give back to their athletic programs and support their football program. Stanford, not even alum, Stanford students don't show up to Stanford football games. That stadium, they had to downsize the stadium, again, on maybe the most beautiful campus in America. They had to downsize the stadium, but it still was perfect. I mean, it was gorgeous, and it was empty.
Yeah, you always joked. All 10 of Stanford fans hate that they're losing right now.
It's
Something
so
like
terrible.
that. And I remember, our guy, Leaf Tulane, as everyone who listened to this station when he was still producing things in this slot, and has heard him talk about basketball. He's a big Stanford guy. He was always I made that joke on Twitter a couple of times when Utah was beating Stanford in Palo Alto, and he was always one that said, well, there's more than 10 of us.
Okay, there's 12.
It's like, the point is the stadium is more than half empty when they play for whatever reason.
The first time I met David Shaw was not in a media capacity. I went to a Stanford fundraising event, like a booster kind of cocktail hour, because of one of my friends in the Bay Area. And it was absurd, James. I was talking to this person's dad who had invited me and didn't want me to embarrass him. So when I showed up, handed me a Stanford polo shirt. It was like, put this on so it looks like you're supporting Stanford. I'm like, okay, fine. He's the general counsel. He's the lead counsel for the San Francisco Giants, okay? So very successful professional individual. I'm talking with him and a couple of other guys. Just making conversation. And these other individuals is like, okay, so are you also attorneys? Like, you guys seem to know each other professionally. And the one guy kind of laughs. And he's like, yeah, I'm an attorney. I said, oh, cool. Do you work in sports also? He's like, I'm lead counsel for Google. At a Stanford football fundraising event. That guy by himself could fix Stanford football's problems. Okay?
Yeah, I'm an attorney. Yeah, not technically in sports, but I have an influence in sports. Yeah.
So like that guy, you would assume as a very handsome stock options package and whatever else, right? Multi-millionaire. But at Stanford, they don't just write the checks. I don't understand where the disconnect is or why it happens, but that's part of the reason why David Shaw, who was the start of this conversation, why David Shaw was not able in this new era of college football, was not able to keep the momentum going that Jim Harbaugh established and that he continued, was not able to capitalize on one of the most lucrative alumni bases, one of the most wealthy and successful alumni bases in all of college sports. Not able to make it happen. All those Texas oil billionaires, they're cracking off checks right now. But Stanford's just like, nah, we don't even want to go to the games. I'm certainly not going to buy players for this place.
Fascinating. Situation.
I hate it.
I know. I wish that it would only take a couple of those guys. You don't have to convince all of those uber rich alumni to be in on it. You just need a small group of those guys.
I mean, BYU convinced 2 guys to fix their basketball program financially, and they're on their way to who knows what. It doesn't take a lot. When you're a billionaire, it doesn't take a lot of you to affect serious change. Anyway, that's my David Shaw rant. Remind me, James, when we have Kyle Whittingham on next, to ask if he ever viewed David Shaw as his coaching rival in the Pac-12. He'll probably dismiss the conversation and be like, "You're an idiot. Why would I even?"
He'll probably say David Shaw was a terrific coach and ended at that.
That's probably
kind of
right.
thing, right? but it's a great question to ask.
All right, Red and Blue is coming. The Sean O'Connell Show continues. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Right side up top to Jenna Johnson. Left side skip to Neepkins. Gianna driving into the paint, stopping. Left elbow, Jay. Perfect.
Valiant effort from Gavin Peterson's team last night against a ranked Oklahoma State squad. Ultimately, Running Utes ladies did fall short. That was a Gianna Neepkins jumper in a unfortunate loss. That sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Tyson Ewing on the call, 16 points for Gianna, and they had the jersey giveaway night at the Huntsman Center. They're back in action Sunday at noon at Cincinnati. You can hear it right here on our sister station, 103.9 and 98.3 The Fan. James, you told me there was some breaking news happening from a station perspective. What does this mean?
So there's a fairly significant hockey championship game coming up tomorrow night.
You're talking about Four Nations Championship, USA versus Canada rematch.
And there may or may not be some booing pregame at this
probably
at this game. So the nation is very invested from a number of perspectives here.
Yes.
You can hear that here on ESPN 700 92.1 FM. We just got the message from our guys at Sports USA who are they didn't have the rights to any of the rest of the Four Nations Cup games, but they're like the Westwood One of NHL. They have the national NHL games rights.
Love it.
And typically it's a couple games in the regular season and all of the playoffs. We're going to have the playoffs for you as well. But this one a late add to their package here. So we're going to have Four Nations Cup championship game, USA versus those guys up north who just hate us for some reason right now. Like, what's going on there? Those people those guys from the north there, Canada.
Team up
USA. USA. No, I'm super excited about this. It's 6 o'clock tomorrow night. You can hear it here on Utah's number one sports
Fantastic.
talk.
So right after the drive with Spence Checketts, right here on Utah's number one sports talk, Four Nations Championship, USA versus Canada. Winner takes Canada.
Your winner takes Canada.
Winner
That's
gets
the
Canada.
stakes. And let me correct myself. It's a 5 p.m. start.
Oh,
I
5
think,
p.m.
So we may.
We'll just cut off Spence.
I'll have to.
I'll make the executive decision.
We'll just cut him off. Yeah, you're the boss right now.
Just cut off Spence Checketts' final hour for Four Nations.
So typically these are the start of the broadcast. So maybe it's a half-hour pregame.
Okay.
And then a 5:30 actually opening face-off. So either 5 or 5:30 we'll pick it up. We'll have to figure some things out.
But puck drop you will have here.
Yeah,
on
we'll
ESPN
have the puck
700.
drop tomorrow night for the Four Nations Championship
when
game.
there's 4 fights in the first 13 seconds because they got to one-up the last game, you will hear those immediately. All right? That'll
Absolutely.
be on ESPN 700.
I'm
that.
excited about this.
No, this is great. I think it's fantastic. You know what I'm really excited about? I don't know, James, when the last time the nation was going to be united around a hockey viewing experience. Like even some of the great Stanley Cup series that have happened in the NHL in the last 20 years, it hasn't captured the American sports ethos like this Four Nations thing has.
Is it probably Miracle on Ice? Maybe the last time
there must have been a USA versus Canada Olympic hockey game in the intervening years between that one and now.
They're always hotly contested. They're always close games too.
Yes.
Like the 0-2 one that was here. It was Canada got the win, unfortunately, but it was like a 1-goal game. Like it seems like it always comes down to 1 goal with usually. We used to say our friends from up north, OC. I'm not sure there are friends from up north anymore in Canada.
I still find them to be very friendly and polite.
I do too. Tongue in cheek.
You think this is going to be the thing that makes Canada not polite for once? like it finally takes a threat to their sovereignty as a nation for them to be to stop saying sorry about everything? Is this the thing that makes them not use that word?
They're going to start saying their H word. They're going to start calling us their H word.
No.
Hosers.
No.
They're going to start doing that.
Like they stopped opening Tim Hortons locations in the United States.
Buffalo. All of them are closed in Buffalo.
Sorry, guys.
Detroit and Minnesota.
I'll tell you what, though. This is a serious thing. real maple syrup is expensive. Are you aware of this?
Yeah.
Like actual real maple syrup,
not the high
unadulterated, not the
high fructose corn syrup.
Yes. Like really good
Imitation.
maple syrup
Yeah.
is already expensive. And Canada could be punitive with their pricing on this. Tariff going to cost more. And now the pointedly the Canadian producers, which is like a mafia, by the way. If you've ever gone down this rabbit hole, it's wild how political the whole like maple syrup production industry is in Canada.
I love that. That's the perfect Canadian mafia.
You know there was like a heist. Someone stole like $80 million worth of maple syrup.
Was it someone who happened to work there for a minute, like Scott Mitchell, and went, this is the way that I could steal a bunch of maple syrup, and didn't think better of it? It's probably that situation, right?
Hold on.
By the way, it is a 6 o'clock. The puck drops at 6, so we will be able to carry it. So Spence will have his full show tomorrow. We'll be able to carry it from the puck drop at 6 o'clock. Four Nations championship game.
All right. Maple syrup heist of the century. From 2011 to 2012, nearly 3,000 tons of maple syrup valued at $24 million was stolen from a storage facility in Quebec. A facility operated by the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, which is basically the maple syrup mafia. Okay? This is what's at stake, people, in the Four Nations. We got to get this $24 million worth of syrup back and bring it home. Just kidding. That's not actually what we're playing for.
Should be.
Rights.
Maybe, I'm with you. We should be able to annex Canada if we win this game. Should be some real stakes on this game, OC. Not just a trophy. Give us Canada. And then Canada said, okay, give us you. Well, you guys have beat us a lot. We're not sure if we want to put those up.
I am now deep in a Wikipedia rabbit hole about the Federation of Maple Syrup Producers, so that's just where the show's going. I'll pull myself out of this spiral, and we will do some red and blue with Jerem Jordan next. Utah ripped the heart out of Kansas basketball, and BYU grabbed that still-beating heart, threw it on the ground, and stomped it into stillness. We'll discuss next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Hour 3 begins with some red and blue. Our friend Jerem Jordan, BYU insider, BYU Sports Nation, gives us time every single week. Today, it's coming off a huge victory for BYU basketball over Kansas. Jerem, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, what? Paul Rudd? Like, who would have thought? We both beat Kansas and Kansas State. Life's good. Look at us.
Yeah. The Kansas athletic programs, I probably don't like the state of Utah at this moment.
Hey, they don't know, but they about to find out. They found out, right? And it was funny to see Andy Katz tweet, "Hey, I covered New Mexico for the Albuquerque Journal back in the 90s, and like that was a tough road swing. Props to both BYU and Utah for getting it done against them. Kansas State was on fire. They 6-game win streak. They lose 2 in a row. Kansas comes against 2 losses. Let's go."
More importantly, I saw on your Twitter account that there was some new flavor of Cougar Tail being rolled out. What's the story here?
For the BYU Utah game. So it's called Royal Blueberry. ESPN's Sean Farnham, who loves him some Cougar Tails. He was on the show yesterday, and we rolled that out. So that's a new flavor for the BYU Utah game, and they don't discriminate from those who have cash, like Michael Jordan. Hey, Republicans buy shoes too. Utes, if they want to buy the Royal Blueberry Cougar Tail, go for it. $7.50, baby.
What would you have to do? What would I have to do to get them to do a special edition red Cougar Tail? Is that something that is even possible?
No, that's impossible. That error 404, that does not compute.
I'm going to make that a goal for the Sean O'Connell Show to try to somehow finagle that. I don't know how I will make it happen, but
you make your own donuts, Sean.
No, look, it's the greatest contribution of BYU to the sports world, the Cougar Tail. I love it. I wish that they still made the bratwurst with the Cougar Tail bun, but it's neither here nor there.
Wait, still? You mean they used to? I'm unaware.
Wait, really? You never had?
Tell me.
You never had one of those? Okay,
no.
I attended a BYU game. It was the first year my wife and I were dating, and so this would have been 2017, I guess. And we went to a BYU game. I think it was San Jose State, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that.
One of the 4 wins that year. Thank you.
Okay, so I went down to get a Cougar Tail on the concourse, and I saw people walking with Cougar Tails that had been sliced in half, and inside of said Cougar Tails there was like a sausage of sorts. And I was like, what is that?
Oh.
What is that? And so I went up and I was like, hey, what's the deal? And they're like, oh yeah, you can get a bratwurst in your Cougar Tail. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And let me tell you,
that was how they coped with 4 and 9, I think.
If you love the combination of sweet and savory, it is the best Franken food that I've ever had at a sports stadium. And I thought that it was just like a thing that was always done. And one of my hardcore BYU friends was like, no, that's not real. They don't do that. I ate it myself, so I know it was done.
Yeah. No, you know what happened. You were there. You're an eyewitness to that glorious event. I didn't know that. That's amazing. That's like BYU's chicken and waffles. Like it's a great combo that you have to try, and then once you try, you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I love that. I want it back.
You not knowing about it makes me feel like I'm being gaslighted, and this is a potential. This is like a potential, because if you don't know about it, it makes me doubt its existence. You know?
I don't know everything. I'm here to learn, man.
Is this like a Mandela effect thing for me, where I've got I also have a memory of walking inside the Statue of Liberty, and apparently that's not possible either. So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, there are certain memories where we block out certain things for certain reasons, but I love the idea that BYU, early in that season is struggling. I think at that point they're like 1-7. They beat Portland State to start the year, and then they lose 7 in a row. That it's like, what we can do to distract from this? Let's get bratwurst and Cougar Tails, which, hey, they're very selective in how the Cougar Tail is used. It's like a special thing if they vary from it in flavor or apparently adding some meat to it. So, hey, bring it back. I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
Also, I just ate lunch, but that sounds good. I'm still hungry, I guess.
Now we're going to have to do an investigative report on when they were discontinued or how long it was run for, because now I'm very, very curious. In any case, we have Jerem Jordan, so we're not just going to talk about Cougar Tails. the entire
Why
show.
are they talking about Cougar Tales when BYU beat Kansas by 34?
Yes. The worst loss of the Bill Self era at Kansas, and we had Jerry Palm on earlier, and he also informed me that this was the largest margin of victory or largest loss for a team that began the year ranked number 1 in the country. It's never been this bad for Kansas or for a number 1 team. How bad was it, Jerem?
It wasn't bad at all. It was awesome. I loved it. No, everything went right for BYU. They played their best game of the season. It's their best win of the season, unless they beat Arizona on the road or Iowa State on the road. Those are top 10 net teams right now. But what a performance by BYU, who the last couple of weeks really turned it on. They started Mawit Mag 11 games ago. Since then, they're 8-3. I'm not saying it's all Mawit. I'm just saying rotationally, they've figured some things out. Dallin Hall has embraced his roll off the bench. Richie Saunders continues to be BYU's best player, which is the most surprising thing all year. Yet you're still getting good performances from other guys. I think the Keba Keita that played at Utah last year has started to emerge more. He is a little more physical, a little more aggressive, a little more, I don't know, ferocious. Like he's spiking shots out of bounds last night. Like it was incredible. And you're getting like almost a double-double from him the last couple of games in like 20 minutes. He doesn't play big minutes. He plays about half the game with Foose, Mihailo Boskovic. Like BYU's well-rounded team, their ability to share the ball. They have 15 assists on 15 field goals in the first half. Perfection as a team that way in sharing the rock. It was amazing. Threes are going down. BYU's defending. They got 14 steals. 10 different players had a steal. I mean, this is one of the greatest performances BYU's ever had. I don't really care that Kansas isn't the same Kansas that they've been the last couple of years. That's not BYU's problem. That's their problem. BYU's thing was, hey, we're going to beat you last year in Lawrence. We're going to beat you here in Provo. And amazingly, BYU's 2-0 in hoops against Kansas in the Big 12 and 0-2 in football. I did not see that one coming.
That's not on the bingo card for most people when you're predicting how this year's athletic contest between Kansas schools and BYU would play out. But here we are. So again, we had Mr. Palm on earlier, and he's currently got BYU first 4. They're on the bubble and an 11
seed. Even
after last night, although he did hint at the possibility that was not his most. He didn't update it today, so I think the update might have them playing themselves off the bubble a little bit. Do you foresee that the team doing that? Do you think that this BYU team finishes strong and firmly entrenches themselves as a tournament team?
Yeah, absolutely. I see BYU as a really dangerous single-digit seed. Now, they might float in as a 10 or 11. If they stumble a little bit here, then perhaps maybe they're a first 4 kind of team. But I think it'd be really surprising if they weren't in the mix, kind of like off the bubble, don't make it. It's like, what happened? Because the way they're playing right now, Sean, is really, really good. 8-3 in the last 11, as mentioned. You have 3 very winnable games in the last 5. Granted, Big 12's hard. At Arizona, let's see if BYU can't compete there and shock the world and win that game. Arizona State on the road, tough game, but can BYU win that and go 2-0 against Sun Devils? West Virginia at home, a team that BYU beat Morgantown about a week and a half ago. Iowa State on the road is going to be tough. Utah at home. At home, BYU feels confident against almost anybody, right? And, hey, there's a little payback because the Utes won up in Salt Lake. So you'd like to think the BYU could go at least 3-2 in that spell. And at that point, they're 12-8 in league. I mean, that screams tournament team. And they'd have they have 4 quad 1 wins right now, 5 quad 2. Like they're playing pretty well. 3 quad 2, so 7 quad 1 and 2. Like those are tournament numbers. Then in the Big 12 tournament, if you're not in the bottom 8, you show up on Wednesday, you win a game there. That's probably a top 50 net neutral quad 1 win. And then on Selection Sunday, you're feeling like you're probably in. Now, if BYU has one of these upsets down the stretch, Arizona or Iowa State, like, hey, they're clearly in. I think Lenardi today, if he hasn't already, is going to have BYU off the bubble. I think they played themselves off. I'm surprised that Palm – I guess he hadn't updated it right. We'll see. BYU's playing good. Like, when are you playing good? Kevin Young said, I want our guys to be playing well in March. Well, we're getting near the end of February, and BYU's getting pretty good.
So I'm sure you noticed this. Bill Self and Kansas were a big story after the loss to BYU because he was pretty candid and said, look, we got to get away from each other. It sounds like he's going to give his team a break because chemistry is at an all-time low. Nobody's getting along. And talking about that earlier today, like this is the wrong time of year for your team to be getting sick of one another and to be feuding in the locker room, on the floor, wherever it is. Where is BYU's chemistry at right now? It sounds like it's bad for Kansas. Where's it at for BYU at this juncture of the season?
It's at an all-time high. The buy-in is really high internally. You're seeing externally. Dallin Hall kind of highlights that. He was the man for BYU last year, and he's coming off the bench this year because BYU signed a projected top 10 lottery pick in Yegor Demon. Yet, Dallin Hall scores 10 points, has 8 assists. Last night, Saturday against K-State, he had a season-high 16, including 14 in the second half. Elijah Crawford is a ESPN top 100 guy who's the third-string point guard, comes off the bench, doesn't really play, gets in there, gets a bucket, bench goes crazy. The chemistry is really good. They are getting along really well. They understand their roles. And once you do that, that's when your team really clicks. Like, not everyone expects to be a 20-point scorer. Not everyone has every single goal in front of them. It's like, I am a rebounder defender, or I am, in Richie Saunders' case, like, no, I'm a guy that needs to score 20 in this game and make some threes and defend. Mawit Mag, I'm going to be the top perimeter defender. Kebakeda and Foose could be like, wait, why am I not playing 30 minutes? The two dudes from Mali, they split 20 minutes, and they have a nice rhythm to what they do in terms of substitution. So I think Kevin Young's figuring it out, too, as a college coach and figuring out the Big 12, and I think he's learned a lot through 26 games, and that experience is showing itself, and the buy-in's good. So right now, BYU's clicking. Can they keep it going for a couple weeks and then get hot in March? Because that team that played last night, while that certainly is the high, it shows you where BYU could be.
Jeremy Jordan for Little Red and Blue here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about BYU's big win over Kansas. And I started the show, we were talking about the Kebakeda comparison, what he is at BYU right now, what he was at Utah. And he was leaned on a lot more heavily at Utah. I think to the point that you're making, they found a way to kind of split things with him and Foose. And that means that as an individual, he's not producing as much in virtually every category save one as he did for the University of Utah. Of course, you know, BYU's got postseason hopes, and Utah is not going to be part of March Madness this year. So as there's plenty of transfer going back and forth between BYU and Utah in this new era of college sports, at some point, every one of those athletes looks back and says, did I make the right decision for myself? Did I make the right decision from an individual standpoint, from a team and a wins standpoint? And for me, it feels like for Kebakeda, it's all about how far does this team get in March Madness? How far does this team get in postseason play? Because I think BYU is capable, but I don't see this being the year that everything comes to fruition, that all of this investment and all this great recruiting that they're doing, like that this is the year that they're still playing in the third week of March Madness or whatever. And I don't know if looking back, you say, yeah, that was better for me in my long-term development, or that was better for me and what my goals are in basketball, to be part of a team that is better, unequivocally, they're having a better season than Utah is. But is it going to be enough for somebody who made that decision when your own individual production goes down? And it sounds like when you're talking about that chemistry, the answer is, yeah, that is still the right decision.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what each individual guy kind of cares about, because that governs how you decide on what you do, right? What if all things are equal, but they never are. But like, do I care about more development, and how important is NIL to me? That's obviously important to a lot of student athletes for their current and future. Can they get me to the next level, or what was academic life like? What's my social life like? I don't know all these things. All I know is I was really happy when BYU got Kebakeda, because this guy's a beast, man. He's having a great year. He's top 20 in the country in offensive and defensive rebound percentage. His per 40 numbers are crazy. He's an imposing figure. He comes in and he starts right away over a guy who had started 2 years in a row in Foose. And they're friends. They know each other. They're countrymen. They get along really well. When one comes in for the other, it's like they're different dudes, but there's greatness between them. And it's fun to see them kind of represent their country and have the experience here in Utah together. And Foose's sister, by the way, is signed to play with BYU next year, so that's kind of fun family storyline. But Yeah, again, I don't know everything that kind of Cable wanted, but I understand, there are greener pastures or whatnot for other people, and that's gone, like you said, to the other side, like Jake Wallin and Hunter Erickson. It's fun to see those guys have some success as well.
You can't have a BYU basketball conversation. You already mentioned him, but Yegor Demon is the projected lottery pick, and you demolished Kansas last night without him having his best game. When he is at his best, how much does he elevate and even add to what was a demolition of Kansas or any other good team for that matter?
Yeah, basically when he's scoring in an efficient way, that's where the other team's not going to have a chance. He had 5 assists, 2 turnovers last night, made both free throws, 1 for 5 from 3. Did have a step back on Hunter Dickinson that was reminiscent of Dallin Hall's step back against him in Lawrence last year. Didn't shoot particularly well. That's kind of the element of his game that he's still working on. But there was this great tweet today that was pretty interesting at Dreamers MBB about Yegor. Over the last 15 years, every 6'6" or taller freshman who averaged at least 10 a game, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds was drafted in the NBA draft lottery. How about that? He highlights Lonzo Ball, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yegor Demon right now fits that mold, 6'9", and he reaches all those numbers. So it'll be interesting to see if Yegor returns. I'm hearing an outside shot. It's not a done deal. Though I think personally he probably will be up lottery pick, let alone like top 10. So we'll see, man. Is he scoring at the rate everyone thought? No, not necessarily. Can he dial in the three-pointer quite a bit? Yes. But as a passer, as a guy with great vision, whose upside is off the charts, he's going to be awesome, and he's going to be BYU's first ever one and done. Sean Bradley was a sort of one and done. It was after a mission. Yegor Demon begins the era of one and dones for BYU. The AJ DeBonta will continue.
A football question before I let you go. We got the list of combine invitees, and Tyler Batty is the BYU Coug who's going to be there for the Underwear Olympics. People are going to talk about
Thank you for calling it that. That's what David Nixon would call it too.
That's what they get him out there. They put him in the Lycra tights, and they're just like, go do some drills that most of them won't apply to your football abilities. But what are his measurables going to be like?
It's a good question. How explosive can he be? How strong can he be? The measurables certainly matter in helping you get drafted. You can't have super bad measurables and get drafted. But sometimes, like with Puka Nacua, he ran like a 4.6 the combine, and everyone's like, well, I guess he's, late round guy, 5th round guy. But then there's like football speed, which is hard to quantify. There's some next Amazon next gen stats or whatever, they have that. How do you quantify football speed in pads? How do you quantify leadership that Tyler Batty will provide? How do you quantify experience, life experience? It'll be interesting to see if Tyler Batty can kind of get himself to 5-7 round. That's fit if he's drafted. If he's not, I think he'll be a priority undrafted. Surprised that maybe Caleb Etienne didn't get an opportunity there, given first team 12. It was kind of a light individual draft for BYU, but I think I've been saying on your show a bunch. It speaks to how good of a team and overall all 3 phases of the ball BYU was. I think in 5 years we look back and we see individuals and go, oh, that was a stacked squad that went 11-2 back in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. Also with the ETN thing, I mean, he is the guy that has the measurables, right? Like he's the guy that's going to impress in workouts, and I'm surprised he's not headed to the combine.
I'm not sure why he wasn't. First team all league in a Power 4 conference, and you're 6'8", 320, and you had a really good year. I don't know why you wouldn't at least get invited. That one was a little surprising, but I think Caleb will continue to surprise some people. This guy was at a community college a couple years ago, and then he emerged and became a first-team all Big 12 left tackle, which is very impressive. His journey has been awesome.
Well, one thing that we know about the NFL and actually about football coaches in general, if you can play, they will find you. Whether you get invited to a combine or not. I mean, Jordan Mailata was playing rugby 7 years ago, and now is one of the best and highest paid tackles in the NFL. So yeah, it's not something that I think is going to even affect his draft position or his NFL career, but just would have been fun to compare his numbers to everyone else's.
Louis Rees-Zammit, the Welsh rugby player who just signed with the Jaguars. He was with the Chiefs a little bit in camp. Like, yes, they will find you. Like, if you're that good. And guess what? He's got a lot of great film on a good team. So that, yeah, Caleb's he's gonna be in the NFL in some capacity next year, I'm sure.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Save me one of those blueberry, royal blue cougar tails, especially if you have early access to them. I mean, come on, share the wealth.
Yeah, yesterday my daughter was really excited when I said, hey, this hasn't come out, but Dad brought home a royal blueberry cougar tail. I was dad of the year. Again, 12 years running.
Well, you could be friend of the show of the year also, if you would extend that, you know?
Competing with Palm, who chose not to update his bracket. Come on, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerem.
Thanks, Sean.
Jerem Jordan, red and blue. Look, BYU savagely eviscerated Kansas, who started their horror. You've seen those feeding frenzies that happen with sharks, right? Where the first one darts in and then spills the blood on whatever creature, and then all of a sudden it's over for that living thing. That's what happened when both Kansas teams came to the state of Utah. Utah and BYU winning over Kansas, who came in ranked, but also Kansas State, before coming to the state, was the hottest team in the conference. They were building back their resume. They were this team that people were like, oh, okay, maybe they're rounding into form at the right time. And then BYU was like, nope. And then Utah was like, nope. So both Kansas State and Kansas now hate traveling to Utah to play basketball.
So was Utah the smaller creature spilling the blood on Kansas in this scenario because they got them first?
Well, it was
by not quite as big a margin. So the BYU coming in and ripping them apart the way by 34. Is that the analogy?
Instead of using a feeding frenzy for sharks kind of a thing, I will do a more accurate representation here is lions.
Okay.
Wild lions, right? In this case, Utah was the lioness that actually does all the work.
Okay.
And takes the animal down. But then what happens in the wild, James, when the big old Maine grizzly alpha male lion shows up? He's kind of a jerk. And even though he didn't make the kill, he comes in there and he's just like hunkers down next to it and swats at anyone who's trying to get their fill. And he eats the lion's share, right?
Cougar's share in this case.
He eats that.
The mountain lion's share.
That's right. And so he takes the disproportionately large portion. That's what BYU did.
Okay.
Utah made the kill. BYU feasted.
Love that.
See that?
Yeah.
That's how it worked.
Did you like the new open, by the way?
Loved it.
I was hoping to get a reaction from Jerem. He just chose to ignore it. He's too much a professional to be distracted by us calling him our enemy.
I'll say this. Sometimes when you are joining the show remotely,
maybe you can't hear it as well.
You can't hear it as well.
Yeah, maybe that's it. We'll have to get him in studio for something. Yeah.
We definitely have to get him in studio so I can get one of those donuts.
Yes. Bring a cougar tail. Stuff a bratwurst in the middle too. Do it yourself.
We do need to find, James, if we can. We need to find like the concessions department head or something from LaVell Edwards Stadium because I want to know
how long ago was this?
This was 2017.
Okay, so they could still be in charge.
They could still be in charge, but like I really am now starting to question whether or not that was a figment of my imagination.
It was a fantasy of yours. Hey, what if they put a bratwurst in
this could have happened. 877-353-0700.
If there's anyone else who
we know what the Mandela effect is, right? Where like you have these memories that are proven to be false memories, and you're like, no, that's not true. The Fruit of the Loom logo has a cornucopia on it. No, it doesn't.
No. Vader says, Luke, I am your father. No, he doesn't say that.
He says, no, I am your father.
Yeah, he says no.
So like James, I legitimately do have visual memories of going up the inside of the Statue of Liberty. That you haven't been able to do that since 1978, apparently. So the Mandela effect is real. Am I having a Mandela effect memory of a cougar tail bratwurst? Please, somebody confirm that these actually existed. 877-353-0700.
If you were at a BYU game in 2017, you may or may not have experienced the same thing.
And why would they have discontinued? Maybe I watched someone walking with a cougar tail, and then I watched someone walking with a bratwurst, and I was just like, what would be really
Your
good?
imagination went wild.
But I swear, I can remember the flavor. Oh, no. We're having an existential crisis here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Stay with us. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Dropkick Murphys and Bad Religion are coming to the Union August 2nd, 2025. Tickets go on sale February 20th. That's tomorrow. Listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts all week for your chance to win a pair of tickets on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Right now, you're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson has an update for you on our Four Nations championship game coverage tomorrow night, USA, Canada. For all the marbles, we get all the maple syrup. We get 8 provinces. I think that's what's at stake. No one's told me. No one's made it official yet.
Yeah, it lost in all the, hey, they could be the 51st state thing. Just as quick aside, is just completely disregarding how big Canada is and how they have basically 8 states themselves. But anyway,
Canada's big.
But anyway, moving on from that, I got a little excited, OC, when I saw we had the opportunity to carry this, and I lost my head. We have the Craig Smith Coaches Show tomorrow night, 6 to 7.
Okay.
Which
All
of course we will still be carrying. So we will not have the full Four Nations face-off. We'll pick it up after the Coaches Show around 7 o'clock. They'll probably be in the second period, if I'm not mistaken, OC.
Okay.
So you'll get at least the majority, a good chunk of the second period, if not the majority of the whole thing in the second period, and then the entire third period, which these teams always play close games. So you're going to get probably the best part, the most exciting part of the action.
Coaches Show's at Slackwater?
At Slackwater.
Okay, here's what's going to happen. All right, I'm just going to tell you, this is spoiler alert, James. This is what's going to happen. Craig is going to be wanting to watch Four Nations.
He's going to only talk about that anyway.
He is very loquacious. He is eloquent. He's always more willing than most coaches are, to give you answers and to talk with you, be actually conversational at the Coaches Show. If you've listened to it, you know this about Craig. If you've heard his interviews here on the Sean O'Connell Show, you know this about him. He's a talker. It's amazing. He's going to want to watch Four Nations, all right? He's going to be like everybody else, chanting USA.
Big hockey fan, too, from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can't grow up in Minnesota and not care about hockey. You're not allowed. They kick you out of the state. If you get to 4 years old and you don't know the names of at least 12 hockey players, they kick you out of the state. You have to leave. So he's going to want to watch that game, which means you can, at least have some updates running on the Coaches Show for Four Nations.
And Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, who hosts the Coaches Show every week, he's really good when there's those things going on. He's really good at least coming in and out of breaks, giving you a little update there. I remember, and I'm sure our listeners do as well, remember many Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show where Bill's given a World Series update, for example. So they'll certainly have some live updates from Four Nations Face-Off in that hour, 6 to 7, the first hour of the game, and then we'll have you covered with play-by-play from 7 o'clock. And like I said, probably sometime in the second period, if not the entire second period, and then all of the third period. And they always play close games, OC. So you're sure to get the most exciting part of the game. You're almost assured at that if we're giving you the whole third period. So there you go.
Do you think the WNBA is ever going to come back to Salt Lake City?
I hope so.
It feels like it would be a natural thing. I suppose for the Smith Entertainment Group, it's probably a daunting prospect to take on another pro franchise at this point, and they would be the most natural of the owners, leading the charge, at least in an ownership group.
Yeah, you gotta think about, to that point, you gotta think about they have jazz and hockey, yes, but they're also minority shares in RSL and the Royals, so that they've got stakes in 4 teams here locally.
That's what I'm saying.
And so, yeah,
there's a lot going on.
Adding another one that probably isn't going to be as lucrative for you business wise. They might have some hesitancy for that, but I hope they do anyway, because WNBA was awesome when it was here. Stars.
Yes, with a Z.
Double Z's. Yeah.
Shout out Margot Diedick. Just so fascinating. Awesome. The reason I ask is because you announced, I think, in one of your updates, right, that Cleveland is getting a franchise and Boston is putting together a pitch. Mark Wahlberg.
Golden State just got one. I think this coming year is their first year.
That's right. There's
the Valkyrie.
The Valkyrie, which is such a phenomenal mascot.
So good.
Valkyrie
plays with the Warriors really well too. It's so good.
So Michael Carter Williams and Mark Wahlberg are putting together a Massachusetts, a Boston bid, and the league wants to have at least 16 franchises by 2028. So the Cleveland Rockers are coming back. Boston putting something together. Golden State, as you mentioned.
And Portland was a recent one that was just awarded one as well, if I'm not mistaken.
What are they, the Thorns?
That's the soccer team.
That's the soccer team.
NWSL team. Let's see. Portland WNBA.
I don't know if I love the Rockers name for Cleveland.
It's what it they had a team though.
Yeah, it
that was
folded
the
in
Rockers?
2003,
Okay.
right? So they're reviving that.
Portland Fire.
The Portland Fire. I also don't like that.
Yeah.
No. Especially Chicago Fire is already I don't like that. Portland, change it. Be like the Portland
Pioneers.
hippies. The Portland. There's a lot of Portland hipsters.
Portland hikers.
Portland.
Portland outdoors women.
Isn't there a spot in Portland that is like they've set up a park that they're like this? We're not part of the United States now. We're not part of the United Nations. They've set up like this sovereign community where like they're like we don't. It's like a protest kind of a situation.
Autonomous zone.
An autonomous zone. Yeah.
It was this. Anyway, I don't know if it's been dismantled or not, but it was at one point dismantled. Oh, that's so Portland.
Yeah, feels like you could play off that a little bit.
Portland hipsters. I kind of like that. Portland mountain men.
Mountain
women.
Lean into your actual geography, like Utah's going to do with Mammoth or Yeti.
What should be the women's? What should be the WNBA name? Because I don't know if they can use Stars because the Salt Lake City Stars, the G League team.
Can I say this without being facetious
at
all?
Yeah.
Sisters.
The Sisters. Salt Lake City Sisters.
Yeah.
How about the Zion Sisters?
No, just sisters. Because it like.
And then the fight song can be as Sisters in Zion. We love it.
Well, I don't. Because you're leaning into the culture here a little bit.
Yeah, sisters.
You're also bridging the gap between the ethno-demographics of most of the WNBA. And obviously it is definitely, like a sisterhood to be a professional basketball player.
The sisters.
So, the sisters.
All right.
What do you think? You're not enthusiastic about this.
It's decent. I don't have a better idea right now, so
James.
You win this show's best idea. I will maybe tomorrow. I'll make it my goal to come up with what I think might be better than sisters.
Okay, all right.
Sisters though, not sisters.
No, sisters.
Sisters. Yeah,
with two Z's at the end.
Sisters. No, Stars is obviously just like with Cleveland. Bring back the old name, but I'm not sure if Salt Lake, if they would have to say, okay, we're going to rename the G League team.
We're
which
not going to do that.
Yeah.
What are you going to read? Like,
and you have the ABA, Utah Stars. That's where all that originates from. And so you want to keep Stars as one of those teams' names.
Yeah.
And I don't think no one asked for it at the time. I don't think anyone's asking for the Double Z Stars to return.
You know, it'd be amazing if somehow the WNBA franchise ended up being called the Yeti.
Yeti. So there's a great.
What's a female Yeti? Is there a different name for a female Yeti? I think they're all just called Yeti. James is Googling.
I'm Googling. Yeah, it's just it's just Yeti.
Like Yeta.
Yeta. By the way, there's a great burger joint just down the street from us, and they have people must have brought in their bumper stickers and others and vinyl stickers to just put all over the walls in there. There's a ton of Yeti, as in like the cup and coolers stickers, and I saw that. I was there the other day and I went, oh boy, these are going to be vandalized because of all the anger about Yeti.
We're a Stanley state now, people. All right. All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back with some crosstalk with Spence Checketts. I will give away some tickets with trivia as well. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show, wrapping things up here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We got 2 tickets to the Lumineers coming in July to Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. If you can answer this following question, 877-353-0700. If you could tell me how many points Keba Keita averaged at the University of Utah versus how many he's averaging at BYU. Just give me those 2 numbers. Keba Keita's Utah points average last season versus his BYU points average this season, and you get 2 tickets to the Lumineers. We talked about that on the show today. Time for a little crosstalk brought to you by Advanced Window Products. If you need new windows, there's one local manufacturer that handles every single thing in-house: sales, installation, warranty coverage. $2,500 off 10 windows or more at advancedwindows.com, 801-850-9100. Tell them OC sent you as we welcome Spence Checketts into our Broadway studios. Hi, Spence.
Hello, Sean. How are you today, buddy?
Great.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you telling me the truth?
Why not?
Would you lie to me?
Probably.
Sean,
but
it's not your fault. Look at me. It's not your fault.
I'm not lying right now.
Sean, it's not your
It's
fault.
not my fault.
Goodwill Hunting. I'm Robin Williams. You're Matt Damon.
I'm not going to hug you.
What?
I'm not doing it.
I like a good hug.
Okay.
Are you not a hugger?
I am actually a hugger.
Okay. Hugs are good for the soul.
Yeah, I'm a hugger.
Once we get the right answer, I honestly don't know the Keba Keita answer. I'm going to guess he scored more at Utah because they don't need him to score at BYU. They need him to violently block shots and kill students in the student section, which he did last night.
He's good for that.
Oh, man. He is as unique of an athlete as I've seen around here playing basketball for a long, long time. I guess his brother's a professional volleyball player. Keba should go play volleyball, dude. Like, my goodness. Because he's not skilled enough to make a living playing basketball. He's just a raw athlete that will block your shot and take your soul and dunk on your head. I was wildly impressed with BYU. And I'm going to talk about this on the show. This is going to sound like a slight. It's going to sound like a slight to both BYU and Utah. I have been unbelievably unimpressed with Kansas, watching them against Utah, watching them against BYU. Like, preseason #1?
Yeah, they're not that good.
No, Houston will, and Houston already has. But, we saw BYU essentially nearly beat them by 40. And, look, if Trevin Nell has one college basketball skill, and it's as a spot-up shooter. If he couldn't shoot it with his feet set, he'd be in his 4th year blogging for KSL about BYU basketball already because he's like 27. And he was wide open all night. Like, the one thing on the scouting report that Bill Self will have it to say about Trevin Nell is, hey, all he does is shoot. He can't even dribble with his left hand. He can't make a play for himself. He is a wide-open spot-up shooter, and if you force him to dribble it once, you watch next game. Trevin will get the ball. He'll put it on the deck once. He'll panic and pass it to the point guard because he can't do it. But what he can do, and he's elite at it, he just scored 1,000 points, is shoot it from the outside. And they were wide-open looks, man. Excuse me, wide-open looks. So certainly happy for Utah to get the win over Kansas, and that was impressive about how BYU did it. But I've been very, very unimpressed with the Jayhawks this year.
Yeah, well,
Something was just going through your mind. I want to know what it was.
I was watching they're showing this thing on ESPN. They're people flopping.
Oh, okay.
No, Bill Self is even more unimpressed with his team than you are.
Yeah.
Sitting down and being like, we don't like each other right now. We got to get away from each other. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Love it. 12-6, by the way, 2049 on the text line. 12.4 points a game at Utah, 6.4 points a game at BYU.
Yeah, that's not – well, the gap is surprising because he was more involved in the offense. BYU has like 8 dudes that can get hot. They don't need him to score at all. And now BYU, a top 5 team in the Big 12, I think they're going to get that 5 seed. They could win 11 or 12 games in conference. Anything over 10 is wildly impressive, and Utah might actually get to 10 if they can get an upset or 2 down the stretch.
Knock on wood for Craig Smith and his team. What's coming up on the drive?
We will do more on this game, certainly. We've got Neil Smith today. I'm pumped because we're going to do 4 Nations stuff. We've got a little beef brewing, of course, between Team Canada and Team USA. Some words have been exchanged. It's Tkachuk and Hagel, the 2 dudes who fought. Now they're going at it verbally. And, Montreal has a 100-plus year hockey history. I don't know that Boston can deliver that type of atmosphere. Boston's a great domestic hockey city. I'm excited to see what this is tomorrow night. The reports are that there are NHL players trying to get tickets, and they can't.
That's unbelievable.
Like, current active NHL players are like, hey, can I come watch? And they're like, no, sorry, we're sold out. So excited to have Neil on today. Rouse is going to stop by for some college basketball, college football. Second half of the NBA season starts tonight. And, as you know, RSL, Herediano, however you say it, CONCACAF Champions League, RSL actually starts today.
Yeah.
Herediano, that's how you say it.
Of course. I knew that.
What sort of formation do you think Pablo's going to play today?
Oh, man. You know, I'm hoping we get a little flying V, Mighty Duck style.
A flying V?
A little Mighty Duck style flying V. Is that
Quack.
Is there any shot?
I would love it if the cameras went to the RSL huddle to start the game and it was just quack, quack. Flying V. Hey, it's out of the box. I like it.
Emilio Estevez just pokes his head out. You're like, what?
Pablo's hired a new assistant.
What happened here?
Probably not a flying V, but I like the unconventional thinking. So we're not going to do a lot of soccer, but RSL is playing today. So,
right.
We'd like to cover our local teams.
Well, everybody stay tuned for the drive with Spence Checketts.
Thank
Thanks to everyone who joined me on the show today, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.